Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen insults OP's dog and gets taught a lesson. Karen insults my dog, so I gave her a piece of my mind. My husband and I were on vacation and we brought our senior dog because we take her everywhere with us. She's a sweet 14-year-old poodle mix. She's having joint issues, so when we take her on a city trip, we put her in a dog stroller so that we can walk around. So we were navigating a busy sidewalk, and this woman, her friend, and their 4 kids, they stop. This woman points at our dog in the stroller and says, "Oh, heck no." She starts laughing, pulls her friend over, they and their kids surround the stroller. The woman goes, "Are you for real? This is not a kid. These are kids," pointing at her kids. As if I was cosplaying a parent by having a dog in a stroller. I'm child-free by choice, and parents like this are so rude. It's like the world revolves around their kids, and how dare I put my old dog in a stroller? Strollers are just for kids. So I told her to buzz off and get out of my way, and I pushed the stroller forward to move on. She then starts yelling, "How dare you speak like that in front of my kids?" I kept walking and she left us alone, but it ruined my day and I can't stop thinking about it. I think she's an idiot, but was I wrong for speaking like that in front of her kids? I was so ticked off. I don't want to be rude in front of kids though. Am I the jerk? And for the jerks who said that I need to walk my dog because dogs need to walk and not be treated like babies, we do walk her, but she can't go far. She's turning 15 next month and she stumbles and falls, especially when there's a big curb or when the ground is uneven. We wanted to walk around a new city and we couldn't leave her at the hotel. Most hotels do not allow you to leave a dog in a room unattended. We brought the stroller so we could walk as much as we wanted to and sightsee, and she could still go with us. And for the jerks who said they hate people like me who put their dogs in strollers, you're the jerk, and I give 0 hoots what you think. Not the jerk. That woman was very rude, and you gave what you got. She had no reason to bother you. Calling her friend and kids over to ridicule you and your dog was beyond rude and would have upset anybody. Hopefully, she'll think twice before stopping and insulting strangers on the street again. This reminds me of a similar situation when I was walking my girlfriend's 9-year-old English bulldog, which is close to the max lifespan of the dog. He was breathing heavily, and this bitter old lady shakes her head and says to me, "Wow, tired already?" And I said, "Funny thing, I was just thinking the same about you." You can imagine the look on this boomer jerk's face. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that she doesn't get to make the rules? I, 17 male, live with my 3 brothers who are 15, 13, and 10, and my ma who's 40. We're not very well off. I pay almost half of the rent. I pay for groceries more often than not, and I juggle having a job, going to school, and raising these 3 kids, one of whom is disabled. I say raising because my ma, between having 2 jobs and basically never being home, doesn't contribute. She's gone by 8 a.m. and usually not back before 10 or 11 p.m. And the past year, she's been home even less, getting home later and later. I'm pretty sure she goes out drinking. The fight went like this. My ma came home last night a bit before 9 p.m. for once, instead of 11 or later as she's been doing. My brother, who's 15, came out of his room to say hi, and 13-year-old brother was already on the couch reading something for school. So she hugged both of them and said hi, and said she'd stop by the gas station to buy us all something and gave us all a candy bar, which was cool of her. Then she asked where my 10-year-old brother was because she wanted to say hi to him. Now, I've practically raised these kids on my own for years now, and I do my best. On the very rare occasion my mom comes home early, she usually just goes to bed. I have my 10-year-old brother go to bed at 8 p.m., which I don't think is unreasonable, and I let the other 2 stay up until 10 because they're older. We all eat dinner at 6, get home from school around 4, and have a pretty clean routine altogether. Now, my mom was asking where he was, so I told her he was asleep. She asked why, so I told her it's past his bedtime. She told me he didn't have to go to bed that early. I told her he did. She told me no he didn't. She said that we could all stay up until 10. I said that doesn't work, and she told me she's the parent and it does work. And then she said it's not my place to micromanage the other 3. She said her kids, her house, her rules. And then she exploded that I could stop being such a control freak because it wasn't my place to do that, or to have signed up my 13-year-old brother for soccer, or to have repainted the fence, or to have taken my 10-year-old brother to the doctor a few weeks ago, or any of the things that I've been doing without asking her. I told her it's also my house. I pay a lot of rent, and they're basically my kids because she's never around. So it's more my house, my rules if we want to play that game. I told her she wouldn't know what works best for my 10-year-old brother because she's too busy to know him. I told her I might ask for her input if she was ever around, but she never is, so I don't care what she thinks anymore about how I raise the kids, and she doesn't get to have a say in it. Not anymore. She broke down crying, called me ungrateful for all that she does, said she doesn't know where she went wrong, and left the room. She either went to her room or she just left the house. I don't know, and I don't care. She's an adult and it's her life. My 13-year-old brother said that I'm a jerk for making her cry, and my 15-year-old brother left the room a minute later, saying he was going to bed. So Reddit, am I the jerk for telling my mother off? Edit. 1. I don't hate her. Some of y'all be out here dramatic as heck. 2. I go to school from 8 to 10, work 10 to 4. Pick my brothers up, and maybe work a night shift if you want my schedule. 3. We're not struggling financially, but we really would be if I didn't contribute. 4. I'm not saying she doesn't contribute at all. I'm saying she doesn't contribute to raising her kids. Not the jerk. Seriously, you're doing the best you can as a stand-in parent. Your mom knows what she's doing. She's just upset that you called her out on it. Good for you for standing up to her. You shouldn't have the responsibility of taking care of your siblings, going to school, and working. Kudos for you stepping up. Am I the jerk for telling my husband, good luck finding a thin supermodel girlfriend now that he's unemployed? I, 46 female, have spent the past 21 years in a bad marriage with my husband, who's 50. There always seemed to be something new that I fell short of. We have 6 kids together, who are 19, 17, 14, 13, 11, and 10. My husband had wanted 6 kids, and I wanted 4 at the most. I was made to feel bad about the fact that I had made him compromise with 5 kids, and our youngest son was a surprise baby. His church family and friends looked down on the use of pain medications to cheat situations. He refused to consider any form of outside childcare for our kids and insisted that I do not work. I felt pressured to be the perfect housewife who never made the same dish twice in a week, ever. But worst of all is the fact that after our first was born, I learned the extent of my husband's obsession with his ex. I'm medium height and I have to work out to keep fit. His ex was tall and thin, and they shared a love of skiing. They broke up when she was 23 and he was 24, and he's always in conversations with friends, describing the ideal beautiful woman as that 22 or so year old who is tall, super thin, and super athletic. When I told him to stop describing his ex as his definition of beauty, he'd say, "Your inability to change your height is the problem." He asked if he should start claiming that Boise, Idaho is the best vacation spot ever, better than Paris and Milan, because Boise is my hometown, and we wouldn't want to hurt my feelings now. My husband was laid off in late 2020, got a job in May of 2021. He was laid off from that job in December of 23, and is having ego issues because everybody interviewing him is younger than him. I had the opportunity to provide childcare for 2 neighborhood kids, but he shot the opportunity down, saying that the money I'd make is insignificant. I tried to help him manage his job applications. That's where the big fight happened. He ranted that there's no way a 36-year-old knows close to what he knows about the industry, so there's no way he's going to waste time being interviewed by a mid-30s idiot recruiter. And then he started saying that this would be easier if I had some earning potential. I was angry because he wanted a traditional dynamic, and now this. I said it's funny he thinks a 36-year-old knows nothing, but that his ex, back when she was 23, already was this all-knowing genius, not to mention gorgeous. He replied that she at least has things to capitalize off of. I replied that I'm done. Good luck finding his supermodel ideal as an unemployed 50-year-old. He screamed, "Thanks for kicking me when I'm down." Am I the jerk? I've often asked him how he'd feel if I started obsessing about the CEOs of the world compared to him. He claims that's completely different and another projection on my part. I think you know you're not the jerk, but I'm more focused on what your needs are right now. I think you need to find a support team to help you manage the situation. He's having an emotional meltdown. Are you financially secure? Do you have an attorney? Do you have a trusted friend or counselor who can be a support and can help you figure out your options, short and long term? Life's too short to put up with this guy's nonsense. Am I the jerk for rejecting the worst name ever for our offspring? So my husband, who's 38, and I, 36 female, are expecting our first baby, and she's due in a few months. We were both over the moon when we found out the gender, but now things have gotten complicated to say the least. See, when we first started talking about names, the boy name was immediately decided. Stuart Jr., after my husband. No problem there. It's a classic name and carries family meaning. But for a girl, things got murky. My husband suggested Stuarta. No, you're not having a stroke. Apparently, his logic is that since Stuart ends with T, we can just add an A and make it feminine. I tried explaining why that doesn't quite work, how it sounds more like a furniture brand than a human name, how she'd be endlessly correcting people and explaining its origin. He's adamant though, says it honors him while giving our daughter a unique name. I've suggested alternatives, feminine names that maybe share a similar sound or meaning to Stuart, names that he's mentioned liking in the past, even just going back to the drawing board entirely, but he's fixated on Stuarta. Now, I love my husband dearly, and I understand wanting to honor family, but I can't imagine subjecting our daughter to a lifetime of awkward stares and endless questions about her unusual name. I also worry about potential bullying and the impact it could have on her self-esteem. So Reddit, am I the jerk for refusing to budge on Stuarta? Is there any compromise that I haven't considered? Help a soon-to-be mom out. Not the jerk. Naming a kid is a 2 yes and 1 no situation. Means you need 2 times yes for a name to be it and 1 no to make sure that name is not the name you choose. Works both ways if you'd ask me. Also, I'm not a fan of naming the first name of a kid after a parent, because then the kid will always be compared to their parents and need to fight harder to be their own person. I have less problems with the middle name being connected to someone else, because that's only a formal name and not used in everyday business. Why is he dead set on Stuarta? I mean, there are so many beautiful names, but he only wants to name his daughter after him. Why not after the mother? Like your name, Junior. He's a jerk to only want to name the baby after the father. Whose last name will the baby get? His as well? Maybe you could find a way, like name the baby with the same first letter as your husband. Stella, Sally, San, etc. Make sure the baby has a middle name if she shares the same last name as her father, because it will be annoying for simple things like mail and stuff. If he gets to pick the last name, you get to pick the first name. Fair is fair. And why is he so egotistical as to require that a daughter be named after him? Yeah, why can't the kid be named after the mom? The idea of having kids as a mean of honoring the parent is so incredibly messed up and bound to lead to a lifetime of dysfunction. But then I'm flat out against ever naming a kid for anyone else anyway, except that you're not having a baby. You're giving life to a human and raising them into adulthood. Give them their own identity for the love of all that's holy. Hey Reddit boy, aren't you a junior? Yeah? Has it ever caused you any dysfunction or an identity crisis? I can't say that it has, Karen. It's kind of just a name. Are you telling me that these pseudo-intellectual commenters on Reddit just overthink things? That would be an understatement for these people, Karen. Am I the jerk for not sharing my inheritance with my cousin that her father left me? I, 32 female, used to have this really cool uncle, Bill. He and my aunt, Sarah, who's 55, they started dating back when I was 3, and we just had this type of instant bond. I loved this guy, and he spoiled me to pieces. It was a constant joke that the only reason he married my aunt was so that I'd officially be his niece. He was ecstatic when my Aunt Sarah became pregnant because being a dad was something that he had always wanted, and he adored my cousin, Julie, who's 24, for the first few years of her life. Then one day while Bill was out of town, I was sleeping over, and in the middle of the night, I woke up to use the bathroom, and I heard the back door slam. It had a very distinctive sound. I was curious and peeked out of the window from the room that I was in that was overlooking the backyard. There was a man there talking to my aunt, laughing and hugging before he went away, and the way that he left was not circling around to the front where the other cars would be going over the fence, and I thought that was weird. I went back to sleep, and when I woke up, Bill was back, and without thinking, I mentioned what I saw during breakfast. Sarah tried playing it off, but she was weird about it. Unfortunately, that began an avalanche of mess, and not only did it come out that Sarah was having an affair and Julie wasn't his, but my mom and maternal grandparents knew and said nothing. There was a divorce, and while Bill let Sarah have the house, he knew she couldn't afford to maintain it, left the country, he had dual citizenship, and never tried to stay in contact with Julie. It was heartbreaking. I missed Bill, and I was sad for my cousin, so I became a target for her and Sarah's anger. In their mind, if I hadn't said anything, Bill would have stayed. I felt so guilty about it for years that I accepted their acts of wrath in silence. But when Julie hacked my email to reject my offer of admissions to my dream college and 2 scholarships, I just couldn't take it anymore. There was a huge blowout between my mom and Sarah, and we've all been very low contact since. Fast forward to 2020, and I happen to see Bill on social media, and I shoot him a message. Ironically, I was surprised that he responded, and he asked about my life. We would talk for a while after that, but never once brought up Julie or Sarah. Bill never married and found out he couldn't have biological kids, and I knew that was tough for him. Unfortunately, Bill passed away. I went to the funeral in secret just to pay my respects and then went back home. I expected nothing, so I was surprised when Bill's lawyer called and told me that I was left an inheritance. I was surprised, and so was Bill's ex-girlfriend, because she tracked me down on social media and put me on blast where all of my extended family could see, and word got back to Sarah and Julie. They think that I'm a jerk, and my grandparents want me to split it to keep the peace, but I kinda don't want to given how they treated me. Am I the jerk? Obviously not the jerk. Your grandparents are delusional. They did nothing to keep the peace when those two were trying their hardest to ruin your life. You don't owe anyone a thing. Don't dishonor Bill like this. He wanted you to have this inheritance, not the woman who betrayed him. Am I the jerk for waiting out my prenup before divorcing my cheating wife? My wife settled for me. I didn't know it when I married her, but I do now. She was in love with her high school boyfriend that her parents hated. She was with him all through university. Her parents finally told her that they would cut her off financially if she stayed with him. We met soon afterwards and I fell in love. She didn't. Once again, this was a surprise to me. We had a prenup that her parents insisted on. I was in it for the long haul, so I had no problem with it. I basically got nothing if we divorced before we were married 10 years. After that, it was an even split as long as I was not the cause. She was hooking up with her old boyfriend our entire marriage. I found out after we were married for 8 years. I was angry and depressed. I had spent 8 years supporting her and her career. She has a much better paying job than I do. It's high profile and she deals with our government a lot. I decided that I could handle 2 years of infidelity. I had already done 8 unknowingly. I filed for divorce on the day after our 10th anniversary. I let her parents pay for our vacation. I didn't do anything dirty like send the evidence I had to her parents. I just had a lawyer draft claim for divorce. Included was the evidence that the prenup had lapsed and our holdings were to be split. She said that I blindsided her after our holiday away. She doesn't understand why I would do it. I said that I just don't think we're compatible anymore. I'm prepared to go nuclear if I have to, but I don't want our kids. Yes, they are mine, I checked, knowing why. I'm keeping the evidence I have on her boyfriend in my pocket. I can blow up his marriage and make her parents really upset if I absolutely must. I just prefer to end things with me in a decent financial position to take care of the kids. Am I the jerk for what I did? Not the jerk, but she should be shown who she is. She's gonna make you the guilty one. Tell everyone now before she destroys you more. She's going to tarnish your reputation and say you married her for money. You will look bad not only to your kids, but to your friends and family too. Tell the truth about her cheating being the reason for the end of your marriage. You don't have to tell anyone when you found out. Just tell them that you found out. Deny her the moral high ground, because at the end of the day, it's her who married you for money. No, ma'am, you cannot demand we hire your son. A few years ago, I worked at a store that dealt in used electronics. It was mostly movies, games, and pop culture merch, but we also sold a wide variety of items like cameras and headphones. It was a very popular store, due partly to the low prices and the fact that we generally paid more than our competitors for used goods, but customers also liked the atmosphere. The staff was very close-knit, and management encouraged a casual approach to customer service, so not only was it a cool place to shop, it seemed like a cool place to work, which it was. This meant that during all times of the year, we were flooded with applications. We actually had a new apps box behind the counter that had to be emptied for filing once a week because it would always fill up. As a retail establishment, we did have a moderate turnover, but the store was small and only had 11 to 15 people employed there at any given time, so we only occasionally picked up new hires. This didn't stop people from applying, especially recent graduates who were hoping that the cool video game store would be their first job. I was working the front counter at the time entitled Mom Walked in the Door. This happened a while ago, so the conversation is of course paraphrased. She approached me, and I smiled and greeted her. Me. Hi, how can I help you? Entitled Mom. Hi, can I speak to the manager? Me. Oh, of course, but he's currently in the office on a call. He was. Is there something I can help you with before he's available? My son turned in an application a month ago, and he hasn't heard anything back. Me, apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. We get a lot of applications, to the point where our employment manager can't call people back if they aren't accepted for an interview. This should be mentioned on the application, but I'm sorry if your son wasn't told that. However, we keep applications on file for 6 months, so if a position opens up, we could still possibly consider him for employment. She huffed and rolled her eyes, giving me a sarcastic laugh. That's ridiculous. Are you guys prejudiced against hiring boys or something? I blinked at her. I was one of the 2 girls employed at this location, compared to 11 guys. Of the 4 people visible behind the counter, I was the only girl. Me. Ma'am, I'm one of the only girls that works here. Entitled Mom seemed to notice this and began to splutter a little because she was getting flustered. She continued laughing sarcastically through her sentences. So what? Are you prejudiced against hiring hard workers? I honestly didn't know what to say. I was trying not to laugh because it was such a weird response. Me. No, we just have a lot of applicants and the chances of getting picked are low. It's not personal. But if you'd still like to ask the manager about it, I can go see if he's finished on the phone. Entitled Mom, huffing, still laughing. No, never mind. This is just ridiculous. I'm taking my business to your competitor. She stomped away. After she left, my coworkers and I just looked at each other and started laughing. We chatted about it for a little while, and when the manager came back from the office, we told him about the encounter. He basically said what I said, that it was one application in a sea of many, and it wasn't personal. Honestly, if you come into a store and demand the manager to hire your kid, it's probably only going to hurt their chances. Nobody wants to deal with someone's crazy parent hovering around the business all the time. Speaking of cool stores, what's your favorite store of all time? Please let us know. 3 words. Bed, Bath, and Beyond. Isn't that actually 4? Am I the jerk for not forcing my kid out of the house at 18? My child's father and I have very different parenting philosophies. He very much believes that kids need to be out of the house at 18 and self-supporting, and there is no relying on mom and dad. I definitely don't have that idea. My family doesn't have any kind of "you need to be out of the house by X age" ideas. I didn't move out for the first time until I was 21, and I lived with my parents off and on after until I got my current place almost 20 years ago. It's not anything to do with gender, and it's not a "you can mooch off of us forever" dynamic. The kids are expected to be working or in school, but it's not a huge deal for them to live with parents unless they're addicts, make really terrible decisions, or are just lazing around. My family doesn't produce many kids due to late marriage and low fertility, and family dynamics are just different when you know you're only having 1 kid versus families with potentially unlimited kids. My place is a 2-bedroom that is set up as a roommate situation. Everyone told me I would quickly outgrow it and it would be inconvenient, but life only allowed me 1 pregnancy before my system gave out, so I never did. My child is doing well in school, is perfectly well behaved, and will be going to college in the fall, although online now. There's absolutely no reason I wouldn't let them live with me as an adult. They may not find it ideal, but there's no reason they would have to be homeless. My child's father remarried a woman with a child and had 3 more kids, bringing his total to 5 kids. He has a typical 3-bedroom. We have monthly family meetings, and at the most recent one, he brought it up, I guess trying to scare them, and started talking all this crap about them finding their own place soon, and life wouldn't always be this easy. I was taken aback and said that it was ridiculous. Of course my child will have a home, at least with me anyway, and that it wasn't my fault he had so many kids that he had to make these arbitrary deadlines. He was enraged that I was undermining him and letting my child hide behind me and from adult life. We left soon after. My family is telling me that I should have been less blunt about it and just kept things on the down low because I basically just said their father was a jerk with no authority. I mean, if the shoe fits. But I suppose I maybe could not have thrown his opinion out so bluntly. Well, who would you agree with, the mom or the dad? Please let us know. I don't know how to email. Can't you just do it for me? Our store allows customers to email their print jobs to a server, which will then send back a code straight to their inbox and allow them to input it on the machine for quick and easy printing. All of this is fairly obvious, We have signs posted everywhere, not to mention we tell everyone how to do it when they ask us. This is a self-service option. Any order placed with me, a full-service employee, is done online or in person, and it's obvious you are expected to pay more for that service. We explain this to every customer. Not only that, but once you get to the machines, it is printed clear as day on how to follow the steps, what the email is, and how to input the code once you get it. The steps are simple. Press your option, print, put your card in, select how you are printing, by USB or email, put in your USB or your code, then print. However, if you've ever worked retail, you know just as much as I how people don't read. Regardless, for the sake of customer service, I swallow all these thoughts down and try my best to help. A woman comes in and tells me she needs to print from her email. I tell her how, and she is almost immediately angry. Lady, I don't know how to use email. Can you just show me how? Me, I actually don't know your email or the service you use. You would have to find your documents, and then I could. Why can't you just print it? Me, well, you need to email it over to this first so we can access it, and I'll show you how to print it over on our self-serve printers. Lady, you have printers back there? Just print it. Moves phone closer to me. Me steps back slightly. Unfortunately, I can't touch your phone due to safety reasons, and this is our full service area. If I were to print your documents, there is a mandatory upcharge to have them printed on the spot. You can come back at this time to pick up your order if you'd want to waive that fee. Lady, it's one page. You can't just print it. I need this now. I can't wait. Me, trying to hide my frustration since this is the third time I'm having this conversation and I've got $1,000 jobs that need to be finished. Her 15-cent job doesn't matter much to me. No, I can't. Lady, fine. How do I do it again? Me, I tell her. I can't get it. Something's wrong. Me, looks to see that she's getting an error that she's not signed into her email. You just need to enter your password. I don't know my password. Me, stammers. I don't know your password either. What good is that? My phone service just changed, and my husband needs these documents printed, so now I don't have access to the right email. But I need these documents. Me, well, you can just hit reset password and follow the no, because it's gonna try to text me the code, and I don't have the same phone service. Why don't you understand? It's so simple. Me, trying not to hit her. Ma'am, we are not your phone company. Neither are we your email service. You are using our self-serve area. I've done everything I can for you, but this is something you will need. She goes to interrupt me, but I raise my voice so she can't. To solve. If you can't access your documents, there's nothing I can do. I can't print what's not in front of me. I can't pull it out of thin air. Lady, your job is to help me. And your job is to have your documents ready to print. Now I have other customers I need to help. When you get your documents ready, I'll be glad to help you. At this point, I just ignored her while she sat there and shouted every so often, It's still not working. There was nothing I could do. Every avenue I tried to go down to help her, she blocked off. Besides, I had a line of 6 or 7 behind her. I'm only one person, and I can't sit there for half an hour to play IT. That's simply not my job. She ended up calling the manager over, who spent nearly 2 hours with her, only to find out those documents weren't even in her email. She threw a fit, but I was so busy I didn't get to hear it. Have you ever had a customer drive you absolutely crazy? If so, what were they doing? Please let us know. I don't see why they couldn't have just printed it for her. Am I the jerk for refusing to babysit unless paid full price? I, 19 female, have extensive experience with kids, worked at a preschool for 3 years, have babysat for over 300 different families, have Montessori training, fully certified in CPR and first aid, etc. For this reason, I typically charge more than the average college babysitter would. Parents know that when they pay for me, they pay for a higher level of care, so price usually isn't an issue. A few weeks ago, a mother with 4 kids, who are 9, 6, 3, and 6 months, who was referred by a family friend, asked me to babysit from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. on a Saturday. After corresponding with her for a bit, she told me she could only pay the rate I charge for 2 kids instead of 4. Given that she was a friend of our good friend and I didn't have any other jobs lined up, I said that was fine with the condition that I wouldn't be doing housework. I generally do cook and clean when I babysit, but since she wasn't paying full price, we came to that agreement. I arrived at her house and was immediately taken aback. Everything was a mess. Her kids were virtually uncontrollable, and she had left a list of things for me to do, many of which involved serious cleaning. She rushed out of the house before I had a chance to talk with her and left me with two of her kids screaming without additional notes. It was a disaster. There was little to no food in the house. Her elder two were extremely defiant and bawled when disciplined. The 3-year-old wasn't toilet trained, and the baby screamed when put down. I'm generally good with clingy kids, defiant kids, and know how to help those who aren't toilet trained, but I have never had to deal with all three at once in such a cluttered house. More than once, I found exposed outlets, scissors, and sharp objects left out, and over-the-counter medication laying around. Despite having agreed not to clean, it would have been a serious safety hazard to leave the house the way it was. At the end of the night, I made her aware of the difficulties before taking the money, reminding her we had agreed I wouldn't do housework and saying I was concerned. She responded with a typical, "Oh, everything's fine. I know we're a little hectic, but so is everyone else. Blah, blah, blah." A week later, she asked me to come again, this time from 10 a.m. to midnight. After doing a little math, I told her I would not be returning to her house to babysit unless she paid me the full price for 4 kids, and more if she wanted me to clean. She was clearly very upset and kept begging me to lower the rate, but I told her it was unfair to have me do that much for what she was paying and to find another sitter if she couldn't pay. She then resorted to harassing me on social media and writing a scathing review on my babysitting page. A number of her friends joined in, saying I'm the jerk who's only in it for the money. A few people pointed out that I've given larger discounts to good friends in the past. Was it too much to ask that she pay full price? Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Should OP lower her prices for that lady? Or no? Please let us know. I think she should do it for free. Okay, call my dad. Just remembered this story from junior high when talking to some friends last night and figured a few of you would get a kick out of it. In 9th grade, I was a little bit of a jerk. I have pretty severe ADHD and made it a habit of messing with teachers. I never really did anything bad per se, but was constantly disruptive and talked back a lot. My grades were solid though, so mostly I just ended up with a lot of lunch detentions. One teacher in particular, Miss On Time, really did not like me. And after my MC, she basically didn't speak directly to me for the remainder of the school year. Now onto the story. Miss On Time hated students being late to class. Anyone even a minute late would be sent to in-school suspension for the rest of the class and then would receive a 1-day detention for the first infraction, a week for the second, and 2 weeks for the third. About halfway through the school year, she made an adjustment to the rule. Nobody was quite sure why, but the rumor was the front office had a talk with her about her policies for sending so many kids to detention and ISS. The new policy was that if you were able to complete a task, you would be allowed into the classroom. These ranged from doing a math problem on the board in front of the class to collecting trash around the room before you could sit. Well, I took this as a free way to show up whenever I wanted. After showing up late for the 4th or 5th time in 2 weeks, Miss On Time started to get mad, and the tasks started becoming more and more difficult. The next time I showed up late, I had 15 seconds to recite the alphabet backwards. Otherwise, she threatened ISS for 2 weeks. This is where the MC comes in. After she had implemented this new rule, I started asking friends from her class what tasks she's been assigning during the other periods. I had collected a pretty long list of these tasks and made sure I was able to do any of them when asked. Fortunately for me, she had used the reverse alphabet on another student in the previous term. Without breaking stride towards my desk, I rattled off the reverse alphabet and sat down without another word. Miss On Time was livid. It was pretty obvious I had practiced with how quickly I had been able to respond. After staring at me for a few seconds, she announced to the class, "It appears Mr. Jumper doesn't take me or the rules of my classroom seriously, but maybe he'll listen to his parents." She called me up to the front of the room, put her phone on speaker, and asked me to call my dad. Everyone in the room was oohing and eyeing at me as I made my way up. Called up my dad, and this is the basic summary of how the call went. One important thing to note is that Miss On Time never let my dad know he was on speaker in front of the rest of the class. Miss On Time: "Hello, Mr. Jumper. This is Miss P, and I have Jib Jumper on the line, and he has something to tell you." Dad: "What'd you do, Jib Jumper?" Me: "I was late to class. The rule is you have to complete a task to not get a detention. Miss P told me to say the alphabet backwards, and I did. Then she had me call you." Dad: "Miss P, is what Jib Jumper saying true?" Miss On Time: "Yes, but he's leaving out that he's been late 5 times in 2 weeks and has a disrespectful attitude." Dad: "Is that true, Jib Jumper?" Me: "It's true, I was late, but I finish the task every time. I'm just following the rules Miss On Time put in place. I don't get how that's disrespectful. Miss On Time. Don't lie and act like that. You know you were being disruptive and disrespectful for ignoring the Dad, cutting off Miss On Time mid-sentence. Now wait a second. You're calling him a liar, but you put the rule in place that he could do a task to get out of detention? Miss On Time. Yes, but Dad. And he completes the tasks as requested? Yes, but then what's the problem here? It sounds like he's following the rules you established for your classroom. Don't call me at my office again unless he actually does something worth calling me for. And then he hung up. I just walked back to my desk without saying another word. Miss On Time just stood there for about 30 seconds with a look of pure outrage on her face. Most of the class was trying to suppress giggles. I'll never forget the crap-eating grins on my two friends' faces as I walked past them in the aisle. Speaking of detention, have any of you ever had detention? Or how about in-school suspension? I know I did. Please let us know. I feel sorry for her, having to deal with such rotten little monsters. Am I the jerk for sharing the news that I'm pregnant with a girl and devastating a former friend? I, 36 female, was best friends with Georgia, 36 female, when we were both 5. Even from an early age, Georgia competed with me on inconsequential things. The level of our friendship varied throughout the years of college and slightly after, but we became best friends again in our mid to late 20s. Georgia and I got engaged around the same time. Once I announced, she set her wedding date 2 weeks before mine and picked the same vendors I had, then wore a white dress to my wedding, just to give you an idea. Whatever. We both started trying to get pregnant at the same time. She got pregnant on her first try and stopped talking to me because it would have been too awkward. I was going through extensive infertility treatments that didn't result in a child that she never asked about. My husband had a psychotic break, and my once loving marriage spiraled in every way. I reached out to her for help, and she said she was too busy with her baby. She never contacted me again, and I didn't reach out either. I was fine with the outcome, learned to never keep a friendship like that again, got out of my marriage, and went on to find a wonderful man who is now my husband. My husband and I also had to go through fertility treatments, and we are cautiously optimistic with our chances of bringing home a baby, as I'm now 8 weeks pregnant through IVF. We haven't told most people, but I happened to run into an old family friend, Judy, in my hometown, and ended up sharing the news. I also shared we were having a girl, which we know because of genetic testing. Apparently, the small town gossip still runs deep, because the next day I got a scathing email from Georgia about how she heard from Judy that I was having a girl and demanding to know why I was rubbing it in her face, because I know she had 2 boys now, and her third pregnancy is also a boy. And they've been waiting for their girl, and she's in therapy because she hasn't gotten one yet. She went on to accuse me of always trying to one-up her. I wasn't going to write back, but decided to try to be the bigger person and just said, I'm so sorry that the news you heard from Judy was difficult for you to hear. I was simply sharing news of my life and had no idea you were struggling with this. I was so pleased to hear from your email that you've gotten the large family you always hoped for, and I hope you and your husband can make peace with the beautiful family you created. My email was then shared to all our former mutual friends, and several emailed me to tell me what Georgia had done and that they stood up for me and are so happy for me. But one friend, and Georgia's mom, emailed, ripping me a new one about how callous I am. I'm used to being gaslit from my ex-husband, and am now questioning if I somehow am the jerk for casually sharing our news and not thinking about any potential repercussions. Have you ever had a friend who turns out they weren't really your friend at all? Please let us know. Oh, I've had too many to count. Not the place to skateboard. This was about 10 years ago when I was the manager of a video game store. We were right next door to a place that sold hair care products in a box mall setup. We would have an issue with the local school kids skateboarding on the sidewalk in front of our store, even though there was a skate park about 3 blocks away. A few times, a kid would not be paying attention and would run into an elderly lady leaving the neighbor's store. The worst one, the poor lady was knocked over and broke her wrist. The neighbor's store manager and I talked, and we agreed to ask kids to stop skateboarding the second we saw it. We would also let them know about the skate park. 99% understood and would go to the skate park, but this is a story of the 1%. I was putting out stock on a quiet morning when I saw a kid go whizzing by on his skateboard. I stopped and watched for a minute to see if he was passing by or not. Sure enough, he's going back and forth. I popped out of the front store and advised him about the skate park, and we don't allow skateboarding on the sidewalk due to accidents. He shrugs me off and walks away. 10 minutes later, he was back with his friends. I advised them again, they shrugged me off. I got a call from the neighbor's store manager. She said she told them the same thing, but they told her to buzz off. I then went to the front door as one of my regulars was coming in. I told the regular I would be a moment. He didn't care. I stopped one of the kids again and told him he can't skateboard here. Same spiel as always. Due to some accidents, we don't allow skateboarding here. You are going to have to leave. There's a skate park 3 blocks north. Kid shrugs at me and walks back to his buddies. I go back to my front counter because the regular was ready to buy his game. We finish the transaction and he walks to the front door. I see him stop at the door and pause for a minute. My immediate thought was he was watching for the kids and didn't want to get hit. He then whips the door open but doesn't go through, and I hear this loud bang. He turns to me and says, "Hey Rob, you're right. Accidents do happen when you skateboard in front of your store," and then proceeds to walk out. I grabbed some paper towels and walked to the door. The kid was laying on the ground crying, his nose bleeding all over his shirt. I handed him a piece of paper towel and said, "You guys should go to the skate park." I then wiped the grease stain left on my door and went back to work. Never saw those kids again. Trust me, I'm almost a doctor. Back when I was a uni student, I worked evenings as the shift lead in a DVD rental store. Yes, it was a while ago. One of my favorite coworkers was studying aeronautical engineering, and I was studying a Bachelor of Medicine/Bachelor of Surgery, so the rocket science and neurosurgery jokes were plentiful, and it was a wonderful way to shut down the occasional jerk who treated retail workers like second-class idiots. But I digress. We were located in a fairly quiet suburb and open until midnight. It was around 11:30 p.m. on a very quiet, rainy evening, and I was sorting shelves and beginning to close when I heard a commotion outside. It was a young couple having a doozy of an argument, and I could hear them coming up the street from a mile away. Bored, curious, and mentally grabbing popcorn, I drift to the front of the store and start adjusting stock there, trying not to be too obvious with my rubbernecking. As I got there, I saw the guy turn in frustration and punch his fist straight through the passenger window of a parked car. He pulled his arm back and started screaming at the sight of blood. His girlfriend was also screaming and standing there with a shocked expression on her face. The guy looks up and down the street and sees the lights on in our video store, the only place still open, and ran into the store. He was standing at the front counter, hand clamped over his wrist, face as white as a sheet, and unable to say anything other than, "Ah! Ah! Ah!" I told my offsider to call 000, and while she was on the phone, I pulled out a chair, grabbed the first aid kit, and tried to administer first aid, but he was having none of it. His girlfriend was hovering around being annoying, blubbering, and hanging off his good arm. The guy, "You're just a video store person. What do you know?" His girlfriend, "Oh my God, baby, I'm so sorry. Please don't die, baby, please." Me, "I'm a registered first aid officer, and I can apply a bandage to your wrist to slow the bleeding until the ambulance officers arrive." His girlfriend, "Stay with me, baby. Don't go." The guy, "Ugh, I'm dying. Please help me." Girlfriend, "I'll never do it again. I promise. I love you." "I love you too. I'm sorry. I thought that..." At this stage, it's clear to me that they're both drunk. This guy has an injury of unknown severity, but he's bleeding all over my counter, so I want to look at it, and they're too involved in apologizing to each other to pay any attention to me. Me yelling, "Quiet!" Two shocked faces look at me. I pull out my first aid and med student ID cards, hand them to the guy, and say, "Trust me, I'm almost a doctor." The guy started to laugh weakly and handed over his wrist. The girlfriend is still sobbing behind him, begging him not to leave her. I quickly bandaged him up, satisfied that it was a superficial injury only and nothing life-threatening, and had him sit to wait for the ambulance officers to arrive. It wasn't fun mopping up afterwards, but 2 days later, I arrived at work to find an enormous bunch of yellow roses for me with a card that read, "Thanks for saving my life." Karen doesn't understand how libraries work. During my school holidays, I worked for a while in the library of a combined elementary and middle school. This particular school is very near the town's library. Our books and theirs are all clearly labeled with the respective institution names. However, we frequently get students returning the town library's books to us and vice versa. The school's policy is to not help them return it to the town library so that they will learn not to make this mistake. I'm used to it as their kids, and they usually get it after a simple explanation. And then you get this. Parent: my son got a call from the library saying they still owe books, but he returned them all last week. The school does not call to chase for books. We have a more relaxed policy and don't even fine for overdue books. The mention of the call is enough for me, but most customers aren't satisfied until you actually show them the record. Me: okay, let me check the system. Pulls up the record. Ma'am, the system shows that he doesn't have any books on loan. Yes, they're from the town library. Oh, in that case, you need to call them to check with them. But he returned it. I was waiting downstairs. He told me he was going to run to the library and drop them in the book drop. Points to our book drop. He returned the town library's books here? Yes. So why are there still books on his account? Ma'am, our system is different from the town library system. He cannot return their books here or vice versa. Yes, he can. My son said he can. Sorry, ma'am. He may put their books into our book drop, but if we scan it, it won't be found in our system record. We will see that it's not one of ours and put it aside for the student to come back to collect it. Why didn't you inform us? We do not have any record of which student borrowed the book. But he borrowed it. It should show his name. Me, patiently. But our system is different from the town libraries. It will not show the name of the person who borrowed it. The parent keeps this up for some time. I'm trying my best to explain it patiently, but she doesn't get it. The elementary school students understand this better than she does. I end up using the dumbed-down parallel I give to the younger students. It's like if you go to McDonald's, you can't buy a Burger King burger there because they are different stores. You must have the book on the shelf. You can check the shelf and see that he did return it. I check the cupboard where we keep the town library's books that have ended up in our book drop, but we do not have the title that the parent mentioned. Sorry, ma'am, we don't have it. Are you sure he returned it here? Yes, he did. Why won't you believe me? Points insistently at our book drop. I'll get him to come and prove it. Okay, you can ask him to come by. Would you believe it? Some days later, the parent comes back again. This time, she has complained to the school office, who apparently was finally able to get through to her, that our library systems are different. My son returned the town library's books here. Do you have them? Me, checking to see if they have been found over the last few days. Yes, here you go. The person who called me said there's a fine for overdue books. You'll have to check with the town library. At the school's library, we don't implement a fine for late returns. But it's not fair. We shouldn't have to pay a fine. Sorry, I have no control over that. I have a feeling I know what's coming. Sure enough, she delivers. No, I shouldn't have to pay. My son returned it here. Points petulantly to our book drop. How can you charge me when I returned it here? I facepalm. I mean, I can excuse a kid for not being able to tell the difference, but this is an adult in her 40s. Entitled mom makes fun of my height to try and win an argument, so I return the favor with all of her flaws. I'm turning 27 in a few weeks and stand at a meager 5'2". Because of my height, people have never taken me seriously, and it will probably be a long time before anyone does. Most of the time, I try to keep myself busy and not think about it, but in my private moments, I find myself hating this accursed height, or when I'm feeling moody. Please don't leave comforting comments, they only make me more miserable. Cast, we've got me, we've got entitled mom, and we've got entitled mom's daughter. Story. So I was standing in front of a self-checkout after picking up groceries, and it was one of those days when I was feeling moody and was wallowing in self-pity. Suddenly, a Karen appears and cuts in line. She didn't even stand in a correct spot for the social distancing, just waltzed in front of me. She was with her daughter, and the daughter already looked like she wanted to bury her head in the sand. Not wanting to deal with this, I decided to call her out. Me, Excuse me, but you just cut in front of me. Entitled Mom. No, I didn't. You are just slow. Please get behind the line. I've been waiting. Daughter. Mom, he's right. You aren't even. No, I got this. Turns back to me. I'm not listening to someone so short. She was around 5'7". Me. What does that have to do with you cutting in line? You just don't understand how our society works. No one's going to listen to you, hobbit. People behind me went, oof, and the daughter buries her head in her hands. Me, with nonchalant look. You don't understand how our society works either. No one's going to listen to your lack of logic either. She was left stunned. People snickered, and even her daughter was trying not to laugh. One of the checkouts became available, and I went around her to purchase my food. I thought this was the end, but no. Entitled Mom wanted to win this bitter battle. She came up to me, used her arms to swipe everything off the counter. You will apologize, and buy my groceries. Me. No, I will not apologize for something I'm right about, let alone reward your childlike behavior. I am older and wiser than you. You listen to me. Me. I'm a senior at our state university, averaging 3.8 GPA. What's your education? Her daughter chiming in, giggling. GED? Entitled Mom. Her face goes red. I still have authority to ruin you. My husband is me. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. Tell me, have you done any sort of work aside from getting money from him? Entitled Mom. What does that have to do with me? Have you endured any form of hardships, struggles, or problems to get to be where you are? Entitled Mom finally shuts up. Me. You see, that's the difference between you and me. Regular folks like me had to work their butts off to achieve what they want, unlike you, who had everything handed down because you married some rich and powerful dude. Entitled Mom was about to say more, but that's when the manager and security dude arrived. Didn't even need to take statements. Apparently, she was banned from this store. Didn't figure out why before. She was quickly escorted out with her daughter trailing behind. People who were watching the whole thing offered to buy my stuff, but I knew I wasn't that desperate. I simply went back to grab the items again and paid for it, despite the manager insisting it will be on the house. As I exited, her daughter was waiting for me and apologized for her mom's behavior. I apologized for that last remark, sounding like it was directed at her. She didn't find it offensive, but found it hilarious. Would you ever call out a Karen like this? Or do you think you might be afraid to? Please let us know. I dare you to call me out. Am I the jerk for not letting my boyfriend correct a Chinese woman? We live in a shared house with a bunch of random Craigslist roommates. One of them is Chinese and was sitting at the kitchen table during lunchtime slurping her noodles and minding her own business. My boyfriend had just come into the kitchen to eat his own lunch, and rather than ask her how her weekend was or any other polite conversation, he instead asks her, "Can I teach you something about culture?" I knew he was going to tell her that Americans consider it rude to slurp food, but this lady wasn't at a business event. She was in her own home and, in my opinion, can eat her own culture's food however she wants to, especially since she was sitting alone by herself first and we just happened to enter the same room after. So I cut my boyfriend off and said, "Stop!" He kept trying to talk to her. "Don't say anything," I said again. He kept wanting to press the issue. Ignoring me, he said, "I don't care, but Americans think it's rude to slurp your food." "Jeff, stop it! Drop it!" I said, as she looked highly embarrassed and quietly continued eating her meal. I apologized to her and said, "I apologize for Jeff's comment." And he said, "And I apologize for my girlfriend not letting me talk to you." I don't think it's Jeff's place to educate people who didn't ask for feedback and were just trying to be comfortable in their own home. He thinks I'm being culturally insensitive for not letting him help teach her American customs. Who's being the jerk here? Edit. By help teach her American etiquette, he meant that he wanted to tell her that Americans would find it rude if she slurped her food at a business lunch or such occasion, not that she had to stop doing it at home. He worked as a cultural consultant abroad, helping foreign business people secure deals with Americans by teaching them about customs and mannerisms and whatnot. So I genuinely believe that Jeff thought he was doing her a favor by letting her know that others might be turned off by her slurping. But I still think that, 1, it's not his place to give such information unsolicited, and 2, the minute you point out that Americans find slurping rude, she's going to feel self-conscious and judged about doing it at home, even if Jeff says it doesn't bother him. Well, what do you think? Was her boyfriend in the right to do this, or was he completely wrong? Please let us know. I'm really in the mood for some noodles now. I love noodles. My stepmother is a Disney classic. A bit of backstory. My dad met my stepmother shortly after my mother died. Don't feel sorry, she was a narcissist, but that's a story for another dozen or so posts. I always knew she didn't really love me, but I was 18 and moved out shortly after and didn't really meet her that often, so it didn't bother me. She made my dad happy and we were civil. Not friends, but not enemies either, so I was fine with it. And now to the story. I went to visit my dad for 2 weeks and brought my son with me. Everything seemed to be fine at the beginning. I have a half-brother who is 6 at the moment. My son is 3, so they played together. There were a couple of fights, nothing major, just 2 kids having disagreements. And then this Saturday I went to bed early because I had a migraine, so I didn't help clean up in the evening. The house they live in isn't fully renovated yet, so there's a ventilation pipe next to the room I was staying in through which I could hear the conversation she was having with my dad, talking about how bad of a child I was not to help clean up. My dad defended me, saying I had a migraine, so what was the big deal? She got all defensive and told my dad he didn't raise me properly. And I mean, come on, she knows what migraines are like. She has a hernia in her neck, so she gets them quite often, but I guess it's different when others are having them. I felt bad hearing that, but decided not to say anything about it since I came to spend time with my dad and didn't want to cause problems. On Sunday, my half-brother was having a bad day, I guess, since he's usually a very bright kid. He and my son kept arguing, and I kept breaking up the arguments. My stepmother was upstairs, lying down because she wasn't feeling well. So she probably heard me and my dad having talks with my half-brother all the time. At one point, I saw him holding my son's head underneath his arm, so I reacted by exclaiming, "Half-brother, stop!" My dad saw what was happening and gave him a dressing down. At that, my stepmother stormed down and started screaming about how my son and I were a princess and a prince who couldn't do anything wrong. She took my half-brother upstairs and shut the door so hard the walls shook. A minute later, she came down and took a bowl of soup upstairs. The soup was on the counter and not on the table where the kids were sitting waiting for food and where the incident with my son and half-brother happened, which is important because a minute later she came down screaming about how my half-brother burned his hand on the soup because my dad hit him. Never happened. And the kid was nowhere near the soup. Just to clarify, there was no burn, and she didn't burn him either, if any of you were wondering. She kept screaming at my dad that he wasn't treating her son right. She kept saying her son and telling us he could do nothing wrong and that we were all just trying to be mean to him. And my dad tried to wait it out and not say anything until she calmed down so they could have a talk. But at some point, he lost his cool and told her that he was always convinced it was their son. At that, she turned around to my half-brother who came down the stairs and screamed, "Your dad said he's not your real daddy." At which point I saw red, because that's the same kind of tactic my mother tried to use with me when my parents were divorcing. I told her it's not okay to say something like that to a child. I would have told her exactly why, but she turned to me with an open palm ready for a strike and shouted, "Shut up, because I will mess you up if you say another word." Not an exact translation, but closest to what she actually said in my native tongue. I shut up, although I wish I hadn't, and that I'd let her get me so that I could call the police. My dad decided to split up with her after that incident, so we would have had something to show the court in the custody battle about to happen. My dad told me to let it go and went to talk to his son to assure him he loved him and mommy didn't mean what she said. She was just angry. Basically damage control. At this point, my son, who was eating soup at the table, 3 years old, let me remind you, and who didn't understand what was going on, decided to say, "I don't like half-brother's name," to which she shouted at him to shut his mouth, and if he didn't like him, then he could play somewhere else. I told her to never speak to my son that way again and positioned myself between her and him. She turned and walked back upstairs. Me and my dad had a talk, and he decided to drive me and my son to his brother's place because this was not a good environment to be at. I ended up going home a day earlier. Today I got a text from my stepmother saying she was sorry. She didn't mean any of that, but that she couldn't turn back this time. I haven't responded yet. To tell you the truth, I don't know what to tell her or if I even want to talk to her ever again. Would I be the jerk if I refused to be part of my in-laws' family tradition? My husband and I have been together for almost 6 years, married for 3. We have a 1-year-old. I love his family, but I struggle with the differences in how they treat their son, my significant other, versus their daughter, sister-in-law. Anything she wants, she gets. I don't start drama, However, I will stand up for what I think is right, and it occasionally causes tension. They have a wonderful tradition where they create a picture calendar for their grandma for Christmas. Every month highlights the people whose anniversaries or birthdays it is. The rest filled in with loving memories. Since we got married, I am now in a couple of the photos. I felt loved to have been included in such a tradition, but last year caused issues. Our son's birthday and our anniversary fall on the same month. No one else shares anything special with this month. His parents told us we could design that page with the three of us however we like. I choose 4 photos. One, our son was just born. One of us is a family. One of him with his great-grandma, and one of just my husband and I. We create the page and send it. We stopped by one night to continue helping them. My husband is better at doing it online than them. When I realized that sister-in-law has swapped out one of my photos for a picture of her with my son. I made a comment that that's not what we designed, and she tells me she likes it that way and wants to use that photo. At this point in time, she is in roughly 75% of the photos in the book. 12 months each, with 4 pictures per page, equals 48 photos. She is in almost 36 out of the 48. Has a whole page dedicated to just her, and a good portion of her photos are of just her. I suggest she take out her photos from a previous month and use that one instead. I then changed it back to the photo I wanted. She ushers us out for the house. Christmas comes around and the calendar is brought out. She had changed it back to the photo she wanted. I was furious but let it go because 1, it was for grandma, who I adore, and 2, we didn't pay for it. His parents did, and sister-in-law chipped in a little bit. We offered. This year, I offered to help with the calendar again and get told she has a special idea for this year. She wants to do recreation photos, take an older photo and using the same people take the photo again. I think it's a great idea and understand that it means my son and I won't be in it. I'm sad, but still offer to help. She declines. Then I find out she wants to do half the book with special recreation. She wants to take some of grandma's old photos and use the new generation to recreate them. I think this is great, and now my son and I can at least be in one photo. Nope, she wants to be her grandma in every shot. Wants to use my significant other as grandma's husband and my son as my father-in-law as a baby. They have no use for me. I mentioned this makes me upset, and I want to be part of this tradition. And upon her parents pushing, she tells me that I can take the group family photos. Would I be the jerk if I tell them no? That if I can't be in it, I don't want anything to do with it? Update. Wow, this has taken off. Thanks for all the love. So a few hours after I posted, my significant other came home for lunch and inquired as to why my phone was blowing up. I told him. He was mad. Turns out sister-in-law told him a little about the ideas and that the whole family was involved. He assumed that meant me. He's now refusing to do anything unless I'm part of it, and that our son will not be in anything unless we are a part of it, unless it's a gin pick. Said I am his most important family. Now he wants nothing to do with the calendar. I'm trying to talk him into talking to his parents first, as this is a lovely tradition. I just want to be a part of it too. How I got revenge on my realtor after I was tricked into a 1-year contract. My husband and I met with the top realtor that a very popular agency had to offer. We saved for 2 years and we were ready to buy a home. He was confident, encouraging, and made us feel like he could get us into our dream home. We reviewed financials with him and he saw we each had Tier 1 credit, both scores over 800. Plus, we had enough saved for a conventional loan. He was clearly so happy because he could smell that commission check. He brought out the contract. We discussed the buyer/agency contract, which didn't seem like a big deal because we were very serious about buying. We also knew most realtors did this, so it wasn't alarming. In case you don't know, the contract is standardly a 3-month contract stating that you will not buy/rent/lease any property without the realtor getting their fair commission. And if you go behind their back with someone else, they will be entitled to a percentage of whatever property you purchase. The clause he failed to mention/we missed, this was a 1-year contract. We weren't worried at first because again, we were sure to be buying a property. Let me tell you, when we told him the price range we were looking, about $150,000 under what the bank approved us for, he became completely upset and defensive. Why are you dropping your standards? Don't you have any dying relatives who could co-sign so you can get the house paid off quicker? I don't want to show you houses in that area, etc. He saw that large commission check vanish before his eyes. We continued to stay in touch because what option did we have? We were contractually committed to buying a home through him and only him for the next year. We sent him links to many houses, asking when we can see them. He would take a week or two to respond back, And when my dream home slipped through my fingers due to his delays, I had enough. I politely asked if he would relinquish us from the contract, as we clearly had different goals. I apologized for being upset, but I told him why. I said I didn't feel like he was making us a priority and I would rather hire someone private. His response? Well, I'll be running your financials for the next year to see if you buy/lease/rent anything. I'd reread that contract you signed and find a lawyer. Then he cut communication. I complained to the agency and they said, try and work it out with the realtor himself. When I told them I already tried, they brought up the contract. I said I was going to speak to a lawyer about the contract. They laughed and said good luck. The lawyer informed me it could drain your account going against the agency, and we made the painful decision to wait him out the full year, saving a lot of money in the meantime. The contract ends and we find our perfect first home, above the original price we were approved for, and with the most amazing realtors we have ever met. During closing day at the realtor's office, the sellers of our home used the popular agency we just escaped from. Our previous realtor watched in the hallway as we signed for a house almost $150,000 more than we would have bought from him. Exactly 1 month after our contract was up. He scrambled to find the now expired contract because he was sure that he was about to win. I know a lot of people at the office were talking about it, and our realtors let us know what had happened after we left. It made me feel good to watch the horror on his face through the conference room windows as his superior told him to go home due to his frantic behavior. Apparently, he had been using company time and expenses to check on our financials weekly throughout the year in order to catch an easy check through a broken contract. There was no confrontation between us directly, but I definitely feel like we won that one. I looked on their company website and his name has been removed from their listed agents. Speaking of dream home, what would your dream home be like? How many bedrooms would it have? And how big would it be? Please let us know. I deserve a mansion, and one day I will have it. Am I the jerk for replying to my coworkers' compliments with a negative story? Lately, I, 29 female, lost some weight, and I'm slowly exchanging my wardrobe for better fitting pieces. I work in a small office. For work, I like to dress nicely and business appropriate. There is no specific dress code. I just try to look good in my new day-to-day wear. I have a colleague, Cheryl. She's in her 50s and we generally get along well. The annoying thing, however, is her habit of commenting on my wardrobe a lot, especially since I've started to change my style. They're not necessarily unkind comments. Sometimes it's just along the lines of, "Oh, cute dress, from where?" But sometimes her comments feel backhanded, such as one day she looked at my striped shirt and said, "Cute shirt, but only people with thin waists can pull off that pattern." The other day she said about my scarf, "I don't really like that color on you. You usually have such good taste." I have asked her in private to stop commenting because I feel scrutinized. She said she would, but soon enough it started again. I've tried to ignore it, but to no avail. I have thanked her and smiled, but I found myself dreading going to work in the morning because I knew that she'd comment on something again. Now, where I might be the jerk. The other day I was watching a documentary about classical conditioning and behavior, and I came up with the idea that if Cheryl subconsciously linked her behavior to a negative experience/story, maybe she would then stop. So the next morning, Cheryl made a comment about my black dress. Cheryl, "All in black today? It makes you look so gloom." Me, "Yeah, I know. I bought this dress for my grandfather's funeral, but I think I can also wear it for work." The next week, I had on a newish pair of shoes. Cheryl, "Oh, new shoes. You really have a lot of shoes." Me, "Actually, I bought them last year to cheer myself up after I had to put my cat down." The next time she made a comment on my shirt and that the color didn't suit me. I replied, not verbatim, "Yeah, my sister made it for me. I would not buy from fast fashion retailer. Not after that garment factory collapsed in Bangladesh some years ago. Over 1,000 people were inside of it." Ever since then, I've told a sad story every time my wardrobe came up. Think operations, breakups. None of these stories are made up, by the way. They're just not happy chit-chat. I feel that ever since I started my little experiment, her comments have died down. The other day, though, another coworker told me that Cheryl complained about someone in the office always being a downer and not being able to accept a genuine opinion. Now I feel like a jerk for not just sucking it up, because actually Cheryl has been very helpful ever since I started working there. It's just her comments that drive me up the wall. Am I the jerk for replying to my coworkers' compliments with a negative story? Do people ever get on your nerves by commenting about what you're wearing? If so, what do you do about it? Please let us know. I dare you to insult my wardrobe. Woman versus mechanic. A couple of years ago, my car trunk was badly dented after someone hit me from behind. He was texting and didn't realize I stopped at an intersection. Obviously, his insurance agreed to cover all damages. Brought my car, which was merely 4 months old, back to the original dealership for repairs. Important for later. The repair center is right next to a big lot where they stored the cars not on display. Fast forward a few weeks later, repairs were done and they called me to come pick up the car. During inspection to make sure everything was fixed, I discovered that the trunk lock latch was not working properly. I mentioned this to the mechanic that was inspecting my car with me, and I will never forget what he said to me. Quoting in his exact words, he said, "Ma'am, with your 4 doors shut and all your windows up, it creates a pressure which makes it difficult to open your trunk door." I was speechless for a few seconds, then told him I may be clueless about cars, but that's not how my trunk door functioned prior to the accident. He kept trying to convince me I was wrong and that nothing was wrong with the latch, and I kept insisting there was something wrong. The supervisor saw us arguing and came over to ask what was wrong. The mechanic explained to him that I refused to accept that nothing is wrong with the door latch. The supervisor then told me I can walk around the storage lot and open some of the trunks of the same model car as mine to feel that mine works the same. He then asked the mechanic to walk with me and added, "As a matter of fact, she can pop open every trunk." Malicious compliance ensues. It took a while, but I opened every trunk, and with each car the mechanic would say, "See, same as yours," and I would reply with, "No." Needless to say, after our little adventure, the mechanic was getting quite impatient with me. We walked back to the supervisor, and the mechanic annoyingly explained that I was still not convinced. The supervisor then suggests that the mechanic take apart the lock and show me the working mechanism to prove that everything is fine. From the surprised look on his face when I said yes, I believe he was expecting me to back down and just agree everything was fine. Well, with the locking mechanism exposed, the mechanic pressed the open button once and the latch moves like normal. He looks at me with a smug face. He tried it again to prove me wrong a second time, and behold, the latch jams. He tried again a third time and no movement. He had to jimmy it a bit in order to get it to function again. All of a sudden, he just walks off. Of course, I asked him where he's going. He turns and tells me he's going to order me a new lock. Being disgusted, I replied with, "But why do that when my 4 doors are shut?" And before I can finish, he told me to please stop. He's already doing what needs to be done. I smugly smiled and I kept my mouth shut. Karen won't order again. Yay. There's been a Karen at the restaurant I work at, and I've been dealing with her since week 1 of the lockdown here. She was a new customer that first week. She'll order delivery once a week or so, and she always has a complaint about the food. After the first delivery, the manager said we had to take her payment over the phone, against policy unless an exception is approved by the manager, because the driver wasn't comfortable going into her house to take her payment. If I remember correctly, 1 or more members of our family were sick. She's pushed back on that a couple of times, but we always make it clear that we need to take her payment over the phone. Without fail, she always called back to complain about the food. The first couple times, she had ordered during a rush, so it wasn't unreasonable for the food to be a bit dry or something to be a bit off. She wanted the fries in a separate container so they weren't soggy. Okay, reasonable, but no need to sound so aggressive about it. Then we realized what she was doing and told the manager, as our policy is to give the customer a discount on their next order if they have a complaint about the food. This continued for a couple of orders. Then yesterday, I saw a note about the phone saying they were no longer giving this customer a discount. I verified with the manager that this was ongoing and not a one-time occurrence. My Spanish, primary language at the restaurant, is pretty weak, so wanted to make sure I read it right. And today, the customer ordered again. It was a bit different from her usual order, and I read back the order to make sure she didn't have special instructions. Sure enough, she calls after getting the food to complain that the sandwich was dry and not on French bread. That sandwich doesn't come on French bread. It comes on sweet bread of the same name of the sandwich, and she didn't specify that she wanted French bread. I explained that management told us we wouldn't be giving her any more discounts since she had an issue with every order she placed, and she got even huffier and said she would never order from us again. I have 2 awesome managers, assistant managers. The main manager is usually only here for the morning shift, who are very supportive of dealing with any Karens, and they handled the situation great. We always give customers the benefit of the doubt, but if they claim something was missing that we specifically remember putting in the bag, usually an odd item or one that had specific changes we had to verify with the runner, they've got our back. I don't work for you, Karen, and I won't. I do a lot of work with lumber and sell the finished products to a select few clients, mostly smaller stores. This puts me into shops and markets fairly often, around 3 to 4 times a month, usually delivering the goods or picking up the trade-in stock/parts, depending on the arrangements. That said, I just got home from a drop-off and pickup routine, having scored a solid win with what I'll admit was a subpar retooled handicap-friendly working desk and cabinet pairing. In exchange, I got my hot little hands on ridiculously underpriced black walnut I have plans for, meaning I am having an awesome day. Cue the arrival of the Wonder Twins at my workshop door, pounding loud enough that I can hear it over my music. My shop, my rules, my pick of the tunes. I walk to the door, dressed in my flannel finery and fresh sawdust, not happy with anyone but the select few people who know not to knock if they can hear me playing music. I don't do walk-in customers, nor allow visitors inside of the shop. Karen: "Did you or did you not build my husband a set of pantry shelves last week?" Me: "Probably. I know that I definitely delivered some to a seller. Yes, last month, 2 days before Thanksgiving."
"Whatever. We demand a refund. Take them out immediately."
"No, I don't do installation or removal. That's a not me department issue. You may leave now." Karen tries to jostle past me and get into the working area of the shop. Me: "Okay, this is a language barrier issue. See yourself out and don't come back. Like, ever. Nobody is going to be allowed inside of the shop."
"I demand a refund, and I will be getting my refund immediately. I'll call the police."
"Have at it, cowgirl. I'll be pressing charges for what it's worth. I don't know you." Karen dials her phone, ranting and raving. I lock up the shop and monitor for the duration. Karen smugly:
"You're gonna get arrested, you sanctimonious jerk."
Me: Sure. I'll be over here smoking a cigarette."
"I forbid you to smoke."
"Yeah, not going to happen. My property, my smoking rules. Kick sand, lady." I'm thinking. I smoke, she fumes, the police arrive and park in my driveway. This doesn't bother me, as I could give a rat's toochus what my neighbors think. Karen:
"Arrest this man for fraud. He threatened me."
Me, pointing to the cameras installed on my shop exterior, shrugging. Cue the cops nodding to what she's ranting about. Me retrieving the laptop from the dining room table and bringing it out to them. Me: "So, to help clear up some confusion, I can show you guys the video." Cops: "Yes, please. Step over there, please." I oblige, they review the video. Karen suddenly changes the narrative. I'm her employee. Her husband is on his way to prove it. I stole stuff. What? I ask what it is that I purportedly stole, and for a description. None available. She's demanding access to the shop, saying she definitely saw it earlier in the day, definitely close to her lunch break. I tell the cops to scroll back to around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then she's changing the timeline to yesterday. Again, I ask for the specific time of day. Another change of narrative. Now, I've stolen cash from her. Yeah, my patience died with that one. Me: "If she can't get or keep her story straight, allow me to do so with mine. I don't know her, her husband, or their many problems. I do know that she is trying to get into my shop, and I will be pressing charges for the attempts, plus trespassing, and being a jerk." Cops scribble their notes, take our names and details, escort her from the property, and remind her to not make it difficult on herself by returning. They make a reasonable request that nobody presses charges, which is cool with me. Karen required further discussion on the topic and similarly obliges. I close up the shop for the night, sit on my front porch and wait. Doesn't take long before her husband shows up, not demanding a darn thing, just issuing well-worn apologies for his wife's behavior. We shake hands, share a few laughs, and I do indicate that I have no interest in being a part of any future direct transactions with him. I do point out where he can get more of my finished product if he's so inclined, and off he goes to a place that I do not envy. I fired the client who gave out my address to Karen, and I stated that I would not be able to fulfill any future business with them. I don't mind the loss, and can probably get a better gig if I wait for it. Suffice to say, it's not been a good day so far, on the average. If you're reading this, Karen, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I hope that you fall on your keys and stub your toes on Legos in the dark. Entitled kid and entitled mom demand that I gift them the new Fortnite skin. So this happened when the Cyclo skin came out on Fortnite. Here's a bit of context. I bought the skin and gifted my friend the skin as a late birthday present. Cast. We've got me, we've got my friend, we've got entitled kid and entitled mom. Story. So me and my friend were just chatting in the lobby until we wanted to do some squads. So he invited a friend to join us. As soon as he joined, he yells into his mic,
Both of you got the Cyclo skin?
me and my friend. Yeah, friend. Well, actually, OP gifted it to me for my birthday. Entitled kid.
Wasn't your birthday 3 days ago?
Friend. Yeah, but OP couldn't decide what to get until the skin came out. Entitled kid now talking towards me.
Can you gift me the skin?
Me. Sorry, man, but I don't have enough V-Bucks right now. Also, even if I did, I don't even know you. Entitled kid.
I'll send you a friend request.
Friend. OP just said he doesn't have enough V-Bucks. Entitled kid.
Then just buy more V-Bucks.
Me. Sorry, but the answer is no. Entitled kid started to get angry at this point.
Gift me the skin, or I'll tell my mom.
Friend started chuckling at this point. Me. I'm still not getting it for you. I then hear him take off his headset and start walking away. Me and my friend chatted a bit more until he came back. Entitled mom then puts on the headset. Entitled mom.
Hello?
Me. Hello.
Why aren't you giving my son the thing he wants?
Me. Because I don't know your son. He's basically a stranger considering I just met him.
I'll have you know, my husband works for the company that owns this game.
Friend. Do you even know what the name of the company is? Entitled mom starts whispering to entitled kid, asking what the name of the company is.
Epic Games.
Me. Well, tell him to go ahead and ban me then, even though I didn't break any rules.
Just give my son the skin.
I just had enough, so I kicked him, rejected his request, and blocked him. Friend. Should I remove him as a friend? Me. Go ahead. Also, no, I don't just play Fortnite. I mainly play SSBU and Minecraft. Speaking of Fortnite, have any of you ever played it? And if so, do you like it? Please let us know.
I still don't see why he couldn't just buy him the skin, to be honest.
Am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to consider quitting a job that bothers me? Before anyone gets upset, I am not insisting that she quit this job, and if she chooses not to, that is her prerogative. I just asked her to consider doing so. My girlfriend, Anna, is currently a law student, her second degree after qualifying in a language degree. During the summer, she works for a family friend named David. She calls her job a personal assistant, but it seems much broader than that. She is his translator and interpreter. She goes to events with business partners as his date or partner, and when clients visit David at home or go to dinner with him, she entertains their wives and makes drinks or entertains and cooks, etc. When David hosts events, Anna runs them, wrangling guests and arranging seating plans and so on. In essence, it often appears she is a kind of hired wife. I have never encountered a job of this kind before. David is in his mid-30s and unmarried. Anna has alluded to him hiring escorts when they are abroad. I've never met him, but this made me feel very uneasy. For the whole summer she is with him, there is a room in his London house she calls her study with a sofa she sleeps on, and they regularly travel abroad together. I never see her during this time. She claims to work from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 6 days a week and says David does not like her to use her phone during work hours. She also said David does not like her to eat during work hours either, but he counts her going to the gym as a valid use of work hours. On top of this are business expenses, such as David buying her clothes. Even when she is at university, she is frequently getting phone calls from him at all hours of the night, which she says is due to the time difference. 2 nights ago, we had a big fight over this job. I told her she looked like she had lost a lot of weight, and she just brushed it off and said she had a stressful job. I said it seemed like a very weird set of duties, and she got defensive, saying it had started out as a more normal job, but that she had taken on more duties as David has started to depend on her. How much can he depend on her when she's still at university for a third of the year? She let slip during this conversation David was funding her law degree and paying her a stipend even when she was not working. And I told her that I found the whole arrangement to be very suspicious, asking if she was sure it wasn't something sketchy or that she wasn't being exploited in some way, not saying in what way. I told her she might want to reconsider this job and that I was uncomfortable with the whole thing. She shut me down and told me that I was being a controlling jerk and that her job was her own and that even suggesting she consider what a weird occupation she had was a massive jerk move on my part. But me, I genuinely feel like I'm going crazy anytime I try to explain her job to others, and even when I think about it myself. Frequently asked questions. 1. I've known her for 5 years, dating for 3. We lived together while studying with 4 other roommates. She has had this job since before we started dating, and David was always her quirky boss that she would have anecdotes about. 2. David knows her family and is close with her older cousins, from what she has mentioned. Anna and David are both Russian. His family is much wealthier than hers, if I understand correctly. Her family knows she has this job, and they think it's great. 3. She includes this work on her CV. She is on the books to some degree, as she gets her weekly salary into her account and bonuses in cash, from what I understand. The clothes she gets are nice, but not flashy, just normal work clothes like blouses or pants or neat dresses. I do not know if they are designer. She has the occasional, very nice dress from an event that she either sells for extra cash or keeps for other events. I do not know if it is from a high-end label. 4. There is a possibility, mentioned elsewhere, that she may be misrepresenting the eating rules due to her history of disordered eating. This is something I intend to discuss with her. 5. You can stop telling me she's likely cheating with David. There are 800 plus comments on here saying something similar, and it isn't particularly relevant to the discussion. Mini update. We spoke briefly on the phone this morning before she started work. She apologized for flipping out, saying that she was stressed and unwell. I said I wanted to bring her and David out for lunch to clear up this misunderstanding and apologize for being controlling. She went off the phone to speak to someone and came back on and said David wanted to have me for dinner, presumably not in the Hannibal sense. She said she would get back to me by the end of the day with a day and time that works, and if she doesn't, well, I don't know. Well, what do you think? Would you be uncomfortable in this situation too? Or would you be perfectly fine with it? Please let us know.
I just want to know if David's hiring. He sounds like my kind of man.
Yes. Karen tries to push my staff off a ladder. I was a site engineer in the finishing stages of a mall. Restaurants and stores were handled by their own contractors, and our only interaction was to ensure their compliance and connection to the mall's overall fire emergency system. Now, hooking up a normal-sized store would usually take us an hour because we had to simulate a fire and ping every fire detector to ensure we had their proper location and address. We usually did this in the early hours of the morning, around 8 a.m. However, by the time we reached the restaurant level, they had already opened, and on this fateful day, I had the largest restaurant on that level to deal with. While we started at 8 a.m., it was around 10 a.m., and we were only halfway done when the restaurant opened to the patrons. Cast. We've got the manager, the entitled mom, daughter, son, and me. Manager. Baron, I'm going to let in a family who came early, because it's really hot outside. Me. Fine, but please keep them on the right wing of the store while we finish here, and we'll try to keep noise and dust to a minimum. Entitled mom.
I have a reservation for 3.
Manager. Hi, yes. Please, right this way. Son. Oh, are they still working on the... He gave us a wave. Entitled mom.
What? How disgusting. Why are you guys open while they're still working?
Manager. Oh, don't worry, ma'am. You will be seated away from the work, and as you can see, they have a transparent tarp set up between us, so you won't see a single speck of dust. Entitled mom.
It's not just the dust, but the smell. Disgusting pigs. Can't even shower.
We have been working without AC on the outside of the store in August since 8 a.m., but we did not smell. Really? Entitled mom.
Hey! Excuse me?
Daughter and son. Mom, don't. The sigh was palpable.
You, the one with the glasses. You need to leave.
Me. First I have a name.
I do not care about your name. Just do as I say, or I will tell your boss and have you fired.
Me. Really? You know, if I tell my guys to step down the ladder, we will close this place.
I do not care. If you won't get off the ladder, I will push them off.
Here's the thing. The ladder is about 3 meters high, around 10 feet. Both technicians are dangling from it, testing fire alarms for misfires and classifications. A fall from that height, with their feet wrapped around the ladder steps, would mean broken legs, hips, and they might see a few broken ribs. Me. What the heck did you just say? Cross the tarp and attempt it. Manager. Ma'am, I'm going to have to call security if you do not stop this. Daughter. Mom, stop. Entitled mom.
How dare you threaten me?
She walked over the tarp. Me. Okay. I slapped her with the back of the iPad I was using as a checklist and pushed her onto the floor and across the tarp. Threaten my staff again. I dare you, entitled Mom.
How dare you touch me? I will have your head for this, you pig!
Me. Well, I did not really touch you. I do not touch trash barehanded. I wiggled my iPad in front of her, entitled Mom.
Son, get him!
She began breathing heavily and as if a demon was going to appear by her side to attack me. Son. No. He grabbed his mom by the shoulder, helped her up, and ushered her out the door. I have never seen someone more ashamed. Manager. Miss, I called security. Please step outside with me. Aftermath. The security came and took their statements. She screamed a few more insults and said I attacked her. Once they mentioned cameras, she started to pretend to faint. I was called in and asked to tell my side of the story, and mine was corroborated by the cameras in the store. I did not face any charges, and this lady was banned from the mall. Her kids, however, were still allowed to enter normally. The primary reason I've been holding off this story is because how I handled it was immature, and where I should have de-escalated the situation, I reacted by enticing a confrontation. Regardless of whether people deserve to be called out for their behavior or punished should be a matter of law and not personal vendettas. While I did not get punished, I am somewhat ashamed of my actions. When possible, we should try to de-escalate situations, a lesson I learned after a few more of these encounters. Author's note. Slap here might be too aggressive of a description, but it's the closest term I could think of. I firmly placed the iPad on her face and forcefully pushed it off. In other terms, the iPad did not forcefully collide with her face initially, but it was a powerful push followed by a body shove. Am I the jerk for drinking in the morning and telling my girlfriend to leave me alone about it? I, 29 male, have been dating my girlfriend, 27 female, for a year and a few months. She moved in with me just about 3 weeks ago. Honestly, since she's moved in, I've been feeling a bit smothered. She's currently unemployed due to what's going on and doesn't seem to be very aggressively looking for work. And I feel like she sort of expects my attention all the time, and I feel like she's been scrutinizing me too much. I'm an essential worker and recently was moved to overnights. Yesterday morning when I got home from work at a little after 7 a.m., she wasn't awake yet. I was a little too wound up from work to go straight to bed, so I decided to pour myself a bourbon and sat down to find something mindless to watch on YouTube. My girlfriend got up maybe 15 or 20 minutes later and came into the living room where I was sitting. As I greeted her, I saw her eyes narrow as she looked at the glass in front of me. "Wait a minute," she said. "You're actually drinking?" "Yeah, so?" I answered. "It's morning. Who drinks first thing in the morning?" I tried to explain to her that it wasn't first thing in the morning to me, that this was my evening time, and that just because I worked overnights didn't mean that I shouldn't be able to unwind after work with a drink like anyone else. But she couldn't seem to get past that it was the morning. Finally, I'd had enough and told her that she needs to stop smothering me, that I'm a grown man, and unless I'm doing something egregious, that I shouldn't have to justify myself to her, and that I don't need her permission to have a drink. I told her that I was trying to relax, and that if she was just going to give me a hard time, to please just leave me alone. She's been pretty quiet with me since. I know I hurt her feelings, which I feel bad about, but I also think she was being unreasonable and somewhat controlling, and that it wasn't wrong to tell her to knock it off. Am I the jerk? Wow, this blew up. Thanks everyone. I have to say, I went all the way to the bottom just out of curiosity over the unpopular opinions, and a couple in particular didn't deserve the downvotes. One especially suggested that this may have been mere growing pains for a couple newly learning to live together. Although I absolutely still think my girlfriend was being way too close-minded and somewhat controlling, I think that poster may have a point. My profession is a currently unpopular one and has a pretty abysmal divorce rate, and while my girlfriend was being unfair, I realized I also took my night out on her to an extent and probably should have been more patient. Hopefully she can see my side too. To my aggressively seeking employment comment, most of my state has reopened, and while it's still a really tough job market, it's not abysmal by any extent. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with OP or with his girlfriend? Please let us know.
Tell him to pour me one too. I could really use it right now.
How a game of Tetris ended years of bullying from my father-in-law. I wish you were a challenge. That sentence has echoed in my father-in-law's house for months now, and even saying the word Tetris around him causes him to turn into a ball of rage. The theme song to the game makes his eyes bulge, and any oddly colored boxes stacked in a random order seems to give him a PTSD-like gaze that would give a Nam vet a run for their money. Okay, I may be exaggerating a little bit, but the funny and sad thing is, not by much at all. Around a decade ago, I met my now wife, Kayla, in high school. We ran in different circles, with her more academically inclined, and me, not so much. Not that I was a slacker by any means. I just didn't see the point in doing 4 different after-school clubs and college prep classes like her. Even though she was a nerd, she was, and still is, a cute nerd. We didn't talk much at all the first couple years of school, but by our 3rd year, we started dating. An important thing to note is Kayla is from a very, very traditional Asian family. So much so that when Kayla had the audacity to date a Hispanic guy instead of shaking up with the 8th grade boyfriend her father had selected for her, she nearly got kicked out of her house. Over time, Kayla's parents slowly realized that I wasn't dragging her down. She was still excelling academically, never came home late, and generally managed to stay the golden child in the house. When we graduated high school, Kayla's family and mine met for the first time officially. We sat down for a dinner, and 30 minutes in, her father had managed to insult, either directly or indirectly, every member of my family. My mom was quiet, my dad perpetually drunk, myself filled with quiet rage, and my grandparents both talking crap about him in Spanish, as he doubtlessly was in his native language. Nevertheless, we finished dinner and everyone left on non-fighting terms. 2 for 5 stars on Yelp for the food though. Fast forward a few years. Kayla is finishing her bachelor's in the science field in the Bay Area. I'm in a different area of said Bay working as a firefighter. It's longish distance, but we meet up every weekend and sometimes a day or 2 during the week. Somehow we survive the college crunch of relationships and actually come out stronger for it. We were in love, we made it work, and her father hated it. Her father, who I suppose I'll call Jasper, because forget that name, still hated me. For years, every time he'd see me, he would pointedly ignore me unless it was to try and belittle my career or income. I would begrudgingly attend family get-togethers hosted at his house. Inevitably, the drinks would start being passed around, drunk Jasper would come out, and he'd try and pick a fight with me while his clan of brothers and nephews held him back from actually swinging on me. Repeat basically the same events over and over for a few more years, and that sums up our relationship. I was the despised demon of a man keeping his angel of a daughter away from marrying her Asian Prince Charming from an acceptable family, so she could breed 40 kids and become both a perfect housewife and a lawyer doctor specializing in engineering while running a Fortune 500 company. Point is, the guy had expectations, lofty ones, impossible ones, but still expectations. So naturally, I did the worst possible thing in his mind and proposed to Kayla. She did the even worst possible thing and accepted. Seriously, I still don't know why. And we were set. The Facebook posts flew, the Instagram pictures set, and appropriate texts and phone calls made. Naturally, I completely wimped out of being there when she told her parents, but in my defense, I was busy. But being a massive wuss hiding in a fire truck on a volunteer day of work, still busy nonetheless. From what I gathered, it went about as well as anyone could expect. I like to make jokes that he pulled a Mushu from Mulan and started saying, "Dishonor on you, dishonor on your cow." But Kayla doesn't like it when I make that joke, but I still make that joke. But it's not entirely a joke. He really did say I'd dishonor his family, bring shame, how could he save face, etc. Some months later, Kayla and I both miraculously have a week or so off at the same time. Kayla has a magnificent idea. She's going to throw a little party celebrating our engagement. Where? Oh, of course, at your dad's house. Perfect. Oh, right, because he has a pool. It's December, Kayla. Who the heck is going swimming? Fine, yes, grand idea. Let's go. Kayla and I arrive in typical fashion. We all start drinking and eating. Most of the family is happy for us, besides a couple of holdouts, and the night goes well. Kayla's nephews are in the living room playing on a Nintendo Switch. I'm a huge video game nerd. Kayla is still the bigger nerd though, guys, and decide to go see what's poppin' in there. To my utter surprise, they're taking turns playing Tetris 99. To an even bigger surprise, Kayla's father was playing. Here's the rub. I love Tetris. I bleed Tetris. I T-spin that crap in my sleep and commonly debate the advantage of 4 stacking versus 1 line with friends. I'm no expert at the game, but I'm good. Like a samurai, the Switch controller is my katana, and once unsheathed, Master has to forgive me because just this one time I must go all out, or something like that. During the years of knowing the miserable jerk that is to be my soon daddy-in-law, I didn't even know he touched video games. But here he was, playing Tetris, and he was doing a great job at it. I was impressed. I walked up and complimented him on his game, noting his repeated T-spins. The family migrated towards the living room since they tended to act as a buffer between us. Without even taking his eyes off the screen, he turns to me and says, "You don't even know what you're talking about. I played Tetris while you were still a baby." You know what, Mr. Last Name? Put your honor on the line and back your words up. The gauntlet was dropped or however that saying goes. We were essentially going Fox only, final destination on this jerk. Kayla's nephews sheepishly handed me a controller while Jasper stuck with his Joy-Cons. We started setting up a game while muttering under his breath about it being a waste of time and him rather doing a million other things. I'm sick of this BS, Mr. Last Name. I'm tired of you basically bullying me and talking crap about me to my face. I'm marrying Kayla next year. We're going to be a family. Why the heck do you hate me so much? Because you're not good enough for her. And I think she's making a mistake and we all know it. You know what? Forget you. If you beat me at this game, I'll literally leave right now. Whether or not Kayla comes with will be her decision. But if you beat me, I swear to you and everyone here that I'll never step foot in this house ever again. You'll never have to see me again. But if you lose, this crap ends here. No more bad-mouthing me, no more petty BS, no more of your snide comments. You don't say a single negative thing about me or my family ever again. By the time I had finished saying the word you, he was already on his feet and nearly touching my chin with his forehead. I was 100% convinced I was going to get hurt. Fine. No, swear it. Swear it to everyone here and put your name on it. I swear it. I never want to see you in my house again, you jerk. After a few more moments of his rage, we sat down awkwardly on the same two-seater couch and he finished setting up the game, and so we began. There is no epic struggle of good versus evil. No monumental Herculean task of defeating my foe or vanquishing an enemy. I was no Theseus, and he was no Minotaur. Just Tetris, blocks and more blocks, in a room extremely silent with nothing but the doo-doo-dee-doos of the music and the sound of our controllers. Around 2 minutes into the game, Jasper loudly comments, I wish you were a challenge. Apparently, my block stacking skills weren't up to his standards, but we had 70 or so bots to clear through before it really began. Bot by bot, block by block, it slowly whittled down till blocks quickly fell down. KOs and flashing lights filled the room as the numbers slowly dwindled down. 12, 11, 10. The music switches, the blocks fall even faster. Jasper and I calmly stacked blocks. 4, 3, 2. It was just us. I'd like to lie to you and say we played Tetris for hours in a slugfest like I was Rocky, but it didn't turn out like that. It was anticlimactic. He messed up and rapidly got stacked out, quickly and without any satisfaction. The victory for me popped up and burned into his eyes. I assume, given that he wouldn't look away from the screen. I had won. I slowly rose to my feet, turned to him, and respectfully extended my hand towards him, eager to squash years of animosity and hate and start planning a father-son fishing trip. That's a lie. I stood up and looked around while the family remained silent and unsure of what the heck just happened. Jasper seethed. I looked at him for a few long seconds until we made eye contact. I wish you were a challenge. Needless to say, I ruined that party. Kayla wasn't happy at all. I was slightly drunk still, and Jasper had straight up walked to his room and slammed the door. But to his credit, I had never heard a negative word out of his mouth again to this day. He just flat out doesn't speak to me unless absolutely required. Nobody in the family talks to him about me, but nobody in the family has ever heard him talk about me at all. It's as if I don't exist. I'm content with that. Since then, Kayla and I had a hilariously terrible wedding, but remain happily married and in love. Family events are always awkward, but in a good way, I think. Who knows? All I know is I like Tetris. Am I the jerk for making a scene during my husband's friend's baby shower over a comment? I'll try to make this as brief as possible. My husband and I, both 37, have been married for 7 years. For about 10 years, he had a close female friend named Jane. Jane is fine. We have enough in common that I like doing things in group settings with her, and we even chat on our own occasionally, but she's definitely closer to my husband. She's been with her own husband since I came around, but I always got the sense, from Jane herself, the old photos, and a few old anecdotes from some of my husband's other friends, that Jane wanted to date my husband before she met hers, and she just never showed any interest. So throughout the years, there has been a little weirdness, but nothing serious. He was her man of honor, a few gushy tributes to him on his birthday over Facebook, or the odd sitting on his lap in a big group photo, but never overly flirtatious. And she seemed super happy with her husband, so it was never a big enough deal to mention anything, but I noticed them all. Fast forward to a few months ago, and Jane became pregnant. She immediately asked my husband to be the godfather, and he was thrilled. I wasn't surprised, was happy for him. Internally a bit, of course she did. But through the months, she's turned weird. She wanted my husband to come over with her and her husband baby shopping once or twice. She asked how my husband felt about him and I being the first people to meet the baby when they're born. It's nice that she included me, but it's clearly about my husband. And then it escalated. She announced she was going to name the baby after my husband, not just his name, but her Facebook announcement said, "After my dearest and best friend, John." I mentioned that was weird to my husband, and he just said, "I think it's a nice tribute." This past weekend was her baby shower, during which Jane kept referring to my husband as the godfather-to-be, which irked me every single time. I guess the month of her being weird just piled on, because towards the end, she asked me to take a photo of her and her husband, and then she said, "Okay, now let's get one with both the fathers-to-be." And I said very loudly, "Oh, come the heck on. Are you serious?" Everybody heard me. I stared at her for a moment. She looked absolutely aghast, and I grabbed my purse and just left. My husband followed me, but in the car, he wouldn't say a word to me. I laid out everything I did in the post, including a dozen other examples, but he just stared straight ahead and wouldn't answer. Finally, when we got home, he acknowledges that yes, a lot of stuff, now that he sees it all laid out, is inappropriate, and he's sorry that he didn't see it, and he understands how I feel. But he is absolutely livid that I ruined her baby shower. Jane is furious, never wants to see me again, and John feels this is going to drive a big wedge through his friend group. So, was I the jerk here? Well, what do you think? Do you agree with OP in this story? Or do you think nothing was wrong? Please let us know.
I wonder how Jane's husband felt about all of this, to be honest.
Am I the jerk for threatening to ban my brother from my wedding because he plans on proposing to his girlfriend during the reception? I, 25 male, am getting married in December. My fiance, 24 female, and I both are very excited and busy planning, and this incident is making things much more stressful. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about the wedding with my brother, who's 30, and he asked if it'd be okay for him to propose to his girlfriend at our wedding. I laughed and said, "Yeah, sure, if you want to get your butt handed to you by my fiance." He laughed, and I figured he got the message. The other day, my fiance came to me in tears, saying that my brother had called her and thanked her for letting him propose at the wedding. She told him that had never happened, and he wasn't allowed to do that, and he just laughed and thanked her again. I called my brother back and asked him what was going on. He's insisting that he's going to propose to his girlfriend at the wedding. He claims it's getting even, for when I announced our engagement at the same family dinner, he brought his girlfriend to meet the family. I had no idea. They arrived separately, and she got there after I had made the announcement. I told him if he doesn't get it through his head that he absolutely is not allowed to propose, both him and his girlfriend won't be allowed into the wedding at all, and if he tries to pull a stunt, he'll be kicked out immediately. He didn't take it well and told the whole family. My fiance and I have been getting calls and messages from them telling us how selfish we are for doing that. How dare I turn my back on my brother? He's also now blaming me for spoiling the proposal to his girlfriend and the family, because if I hadn't been such a jerk, he wouldn't have had to break the news to the family like this. I still stand by what I did. I don't think I was out of line at all, but my fiance thinks we should have just let him propose to avoid conflict. I know it means a lot to her that everyone gets along and that there's no hard feelings, especially since she's feeling stressed as is, but I don't want to give in to my brother. Am I the jerk? To address something, while I understand the intent behind the suggestions, my fiance and I will not be telling my brother that we'll announce a pregnancy at his wedding in retaliation. We are unable to conceive, and this is a sore subject to us. Fire us or cut our pay? Enjoy a mass walkout. Back in the early 2000s, I worked for a tech company who offered tech support, on-site support, and training to organizations who either didn't want specialized IT staff or could benefit from outsourcing. 2006, and I'm still stuck in this job on the same pay. Conditions are worse than before, with no overtime, no flexi-time, no financial compensation for industry qualifications, shortened breaks, and no pay raises since I started. To make matters worse, they sold part of the land that the office was on to a developer, and on-site car parking was now for management only. We had to either pay to use the nearby council car park or risk parking on the street. Morale was low, but despite bad pay, it was still good for the area we lived in. One Friday in July, I think it was the 21st, one of the senior engineers finds a document that he shares around the private chat app. It's a restructuring plan that the board voted in last week. Apparently, this had to be made available for the company for 3 months before any changes to terms and conditions could be made, so the board gave it a generic file name and tried to bury it in the large staff shared area of the network. One of the directors was selling his shares and moving on, having been headhunted by a large recruitment firm in a nearby city. The 2 remaining directors had managed to buy most of her shares with a small quantity going outside the company. This was the company response. Most of the document was a typical downsize/restructure package with a twist. A few team mergers, staff reductions, and pay cuts spun as if to say that they needed to maximize their profits to put the lost money back into the company. In October, a new contract would be released for all to sign and was generic. In November, the restructure would be announced, and by January 1st, the new structure would be in place. The directors noted that the new contract needed to include clauses for non-competition and for soliciting customers, as these didn't exist except for the sales staff. It also mapped current positions to their new ones and what the new salary would be. I would be down by £5,000 a year, but the twist was that anyone with the word manager in their title would have their pay increased drastically. The team manager's pay jumped from $52,000 to $65,000, for example. By the end of the day, everyone under the rank of team leader had seen this document and was not happy. Over the weekend, I got a text message from one of our senior engineers inviting me to a barbecue at his house. When I got there, most of the tech staff was there, and during the afternoon, we formulated a battle plan. Our revenge. Monday, 24th, July, 8 a.m. 26 people in the tech team arrived for work as normal, each with a letter for the senior manager giving their 1-month notice, and all quoting the clause in their contract that states that members of the technical team with access to confidential company information must be off-site and on gardening leave the same day as they hand in their notice. No exceptions will be given. Gardening leave is a term used to say that we still work for the company, have handed in our notice to quit, but can't remain on site or using company resources, so must wait out the remainder of the notice at home. We can't start a new job within that period. The net effect was that at 9:30 a.m., the director realized that his entire tech staff had quit and marched to the office floor and started harassing one of our seniors. The senior simply stood, took off his ID badge and swipe card, handed it to the director and told him, "I've already quit. This is me now sticking to my contract." On cue, most of the staff followed, with one member staying until lunchtime. From what I've been told, directors, senior managers, anyone they could get a hold of were on the phones attempting to fix issues. The unsolved open queue went from around 35 to nearly 100 by lunchtime, and naturally the blame was left firmly at the door of those who quit. We were even badmouthed to customers. The day after our notice period expired, the senior engineer welcomed 25 new staff to his new company and had already taken 10 large contracts from the place we used to work for. We all had better pay, not much, but it was better than losing pay, and much better conditions, with an actual career track rather than the whim of the managers. The old company tried to keep afloat for a year, but were losing money on every contract and couldn't afford to employ skilled or experienced people. They closed down in June of 2007, with the owners having to sell personal assets to pay debts, and the 2 remaining directors declaring personal bankruptcy too. I left the new company in 2010 as the market had changed and more companies were hiring staff than outsourcing, so contracts were harder to find, and I also had some minor medical issues that meant I needed to be near home. New company is still going strong though, having learned more towards web design and development than anything else these days. You're a writer? Great. Do my kids' homework. Mildly useful information. In my country, it's customary to live with your parents until you get married. Please don't give me crap for this. They're lovely and I adore living with them. Background. At the time of this story, I, at the time 24, female, was riding a career high. I was working for a famous, in my country, screenwriter, and we were doing projects for Netflix and Spamazon. I put writing my book on hold for this. Before anyone asks, both shows went into development heck and will not be released internationally in any case. My parents and I were moving into a new fancy apartment building that has its own cafe. You cannot access the cafe unless you are a resident or have been given a pass. I was in there one day getting coffee and chatting with some other residents while waiting for some things to be delivered. A nice couple was telling me about how much I was going to like living there and how nice everyone in the building is when in walks entitled dad with entitled kid in tow. A cold wind blew in and my steaming cup of coffee turned tepid. Entitled dad, who I've never seen before, points at me and says, "Ink in the water! You're the famous writer!" I writhed under this accusation as I was in no way famous and had no idea who this lunatic pointing at me was. The couple backed away, an entitled kid runs at me and hugs my legs. Thrown off balance, I dropped my coffee onto my foot, which turned back to scalding the moment it touched my foot. Howling in pain, I hobbled to a sofa and sat down as the staff scrambled to get me some ice. Entitled kid still had a death grip on me, and I had to pry her off. The nice couple was handing me napkins when entitled dad plowed through them and pointed at me again. "Ink in the water! You look just like your mom. I met her in the lobby, and she told me you're a writer and that you were here. This is my kid, Miss Kleptomaniac." Entitled kid was now setting down her backpack next to me. Me: "I'm sorry, I have no idea who you are." Entitled dad: "I'm Mr. Jerk. So, since you're a writer, you can do Entitled Kid's homework for her and give me your number so I can set up a time for you to give her English lessons every day." This is about when I thought I was having a stroke. I'm a teacher now? Is this kid opening up a textbook? Me: "I think you have the wrong person. I don't teach." Entitled dad: "I know, but you can start now. It's our duty to teach the youth. So I'll just pick Entitled Kid up in an hour, okay? I actually have to run. I'll get your number from your mom." And he walked out, leaving me with this loud, belligerent girl who insisted on going through my purse. She then proceeded to shove her homework at me and demand that I do it while she played on her iPad. Spinning with pain and confusion, I pried my purse away from Entitled Kid, who immediately began to scream. I hobbled out of there, wincing, while Entitled Kid stayed inside and demanded that the staff give her cookies. I made it to the lobby where Entitled Dad was terrorizing others. He looks at me and apparently loses what was left of his fragile mind. Entitled Dad: "What are you doing here? I told you to finish Entitled Kid's homework. Did you leave her alone in the cafe?" Me: "Yeah, that is not my job, and yes, I did. I need to get something on my foot. You can go get her." Entitled Dad proceeds to bar my way to the elevator and demands that I wait until he gets Entitled Kid so we can all go up to my apartment and I can do her homework there. This is where I kind of lost it. I yelled for security and they came running, took one look at me leaning against the wall in pain, and escorted me into the elevator. Entitled Dad was yelling at me the whole time, saying he would be up there soon. So here's where it gets worse. In the elevator, security informed me that he was a realtor and not a resident. He would not be allowed up to my apartment after what I told them. Upstairs, my parents were horrified, and my mother apologized for telling anyone what I did. Apparently, he told her and some others that he was a resident. Entitled Dad cornered her in the lobby and demanded my number. She gave him a piece of her mind, told him I was injured and that his foot would be someplace unpleasant if he or his kid ever approached me again. He backed down, but told her I should be more understanding because "Ink in the Water is old enough to get married and have her own kids. Who stays unmarried at 24? She had him escorted off the premises. He's now banned entry for harassing residents. Entitled Kid stole what she thought were mints from my purse. They were herbal laxatives. Crappy treats for little freaks. Edit: "You guys are crazy. Thank you so much for the awards and kind words. I've been in a major slump, and your words are beyond encouraging." Am I the jerk for picking the dog over my girlfriend? Me, 37 male, and my girlfriend, 29 female, have been living together since April. We'd been dating for about 6 months, and her lease is up middle of August, so we figured we'd try living together and she could move in for real once her lease was up. Things have been great with one hitch: my dog, Russ. Russ is a 9-year-old, 13-pound Brussels Griffin. I rescued him at 1, and of my 3 dogs, he's my favorite. He's sweet, always happy to see me, and is adorably ugly. He's also a devious little turd. Some folks say dogs don't know the things they do are wrong. Russ knows, because the wrong things he does only happen if I'm not in the room to catch him. It's mostly harmless, taking food wrappers or used Kleenex out of the waste paper baskets and shredding them. He's done it so much over the last 8 years that I don't even get mad at him anymore. There's no point. My girlfriend thought this was cute until Russ ate a tube of lipstick. Turns out, Russ really likes lipstick. The bathroom has a makeup vanity that the girlfriend laid claim to. Once Russ decided he likes lipstick, I told her, "Put your stuff in the drawers or push the little stool in when you're not in the bathroom, because he can jump on the stool and then to the counter, and he 100% will do that." So, long story short, Russ has eaten well over $100 worth of lipstick. I always offer to replace the destroyed product, but my girlfriend got really mad each time. I push in her stool if I see it out, but I can't be everywhere. So Russ has gotten by us a few times and ate some fancy lipstick. She keeps demanding I do something, but there's nothing to do. Russ is a stubborn little dog. If I could stop him from sneaking things he shouldn't get into, I'd have done it a long time ago. And I'm not gonna punish him. I'll scold him if I catch him doing something bad, but not hours after he did it. It's also worth noting that I have a pretty good job and can replace any of these when Russ eats them. Last week was the last straw for my girlfriend. I heard her yell and came into the bathroom to find her holding a chewed up stick and Russ with pink all over his face. My girlfriend told me that she had paid $60 for that lipstick and was done having makeup destroyed. If she was staying, Russ needed to go. I told her if that was the case, she should probably stay at her place for a few days. She seemed shocked. It didn't seem to occur to her that I wouldn't immediately get rid of the dog I've had with me for 8 years over some lipstick that I can replace easily. She since went back to her place and I've gotten the silent treatment. I think she's waiting for me to apologize and tell her I'll give up Russ, but that's not going to happen. I've told her what to do to protect her makeup and even done it for her when I've seen it left out where Russ can get to it. So, am I the jerk for picking the dog? What do you think? Do you agree with OP or with his girlfriend? Please let us know.
If I tell you to get rid of a dog, you better get rid of it.
Bully me? Fine, but I'll start a fire as I leave. I worked at a Fortune 500 company for almost a year and a half. I won't name names, but it was a shady company to say the least. I started in their quality department, but I was literally fired for being too quality for the quality department because I would report sales agents that were forcing crying retirees into making a purchase. So they moved me to the business verification department so I could instead make these customers happier with their purchase. I'm sorry to say I was far too good at this job as well. I got constant kudos from the quality department that I always hit my marks. I always verified and corrected information, followed procedure to a T, and even took on several extra projects just to help out, including preparing and sending gifts out to our higher volume customers on behalf of the sales reps. I was always on time, I was friendly with everyone, and yet I didn't quite fit in. As a matter of fact, only one person on this new team was someone I could talk to. The others were all mid to late 30s with kids and husbands or ex-husbands. Best way to describe them, it's the Heathers that grew old and hated it. They would constantly bully me. I don't mean tease me. I mean they would joke about forcing me to work in a broom closet. They would report me for cell phone use even though cell phones were allowed. Just no recording or video calling since we would verify card and address information verbally. They would deliberately leave me out of company food orders and celebrations and even convinced the manager not to promote me and instead promoted someone who had been there less time with less quality only because she fit in better. She had literally cost the company money shipping product to the wrong address multiple times and still was promoted within the department. They would also berate me for the state of my desk. I will say I don't keep a super clean desk, but we are not customer facing, and it was my organized chaos. It wasn't old food or trash, just a general scattering of notes and trinkets that never overflowed past my desk. The real juice here though was about 4 months into this position, I started documenting all the bullying. Every instance, every word, with a date and time, and often a reference within the company's system for where to locate proof of the bullying, all on those little notepads. Well, one day I came back from lunch and they had gone through my desk to clean it, going so far as to move my trinkets and pictures around on my desk. I took everything home that day, but I knew they had actually been going after my notebooks. Thankfully, I had just had to buy a third one. I filled the first 2 up, so it was mostly empty. The final straw came on a fateful February afternoon. It was a Thursday. The one coworker I got along with and I had been texting back and forth, mostly Craigslist ads for job openings and funny memes to get us through the day, because remember, phones are allowed. She goes to lunch as I'm coming back and I get called into their lawyer's office. Me and my one and only friend were being given formal write-ups. Why? Direct quote. Your coworkers know you are texting about them and laughing and they don't like it. So I was getting a write-up because of an assumption that they had no proof of to begin with and wasn't even remotely true. The topper of this was as I exited the write-up, one of them was FaceTiming her husband, which was against the rules, but of course she wasn't even spoken to about it. I was done, beyond done. I put my head down, barely worked for the rest of the day. When I got home, I texted my manager and let her know I was using PTO and I'd be out Friday. I spent the whole weekend working on my resignation because I wanted it to be just right. You see, I'd been there a year and a half at this point, and I knew a few things about how this shady company operates by now. I knew on Thursday this was going to be my first time ever to quit a job, and I wanted to do it up right. I wrote in there specific details of the bullying, dates, times. I mentioned I had many more examples documented. I wrote how it was known behavior and even condoned by the manager. I wrote about the write-up. Then, after many critiques, I saved it as a draft. I walked in on Monday morning, 8 a.m. on the nose. I didn't bother clocking in, and I'd already cleaned out my desk, remember? I sat down, printed 2 copies of my email, and then sent it directly to the CEO. I, of course, dropped a copy off with HR and then walked out. Not a word to my manager. Only my one friend knew the plan. You see, I knew they'd snuff out the fire if I said anything to them about why I quit, sweep it under the rug. Oh well, one more person who quit. By involving the CEO, I eliminated that as an option. In 30 minutes, their lawyer was calling me for an exit interview. They were worried I would sue for a hostile working environment. In hindsight, I should have, but I was more worried about my mental health than monetary compensation. I found out from my friend that I had in fact started that fire. The whole department was put under review for bullying, cell phones were completely banned, and the manager and her lackeys, last I heard, had been demoted. I also heard whispers that they had dissolved it completely and merged it with the quality team, but I'm not positive on that. I'm sure it didn't fix everything, but I hope they at least keep their hands out of other people's desks from now on. Edits for clarity based on many comments. This story is from approximately 4 years ago. I googled to see if it was still a Fortune 500 company to this day, and it is. It was not a large company, maybe 400 or 500 people. Most of them were sales. Like 90% were sales. Again though, that was 4 years ago. I have no idea how big they are now. I was not a random emailing the CEO. I had met and spoken with the CEO several times. The write-up was not just me and the lawyer. My manager and the HR head were also there. They did force me to sign it though, which I found out later was very illegal. But I did get copies of it for my copious amount of documentation, which I do still have. I am by no means perfect. I'm very non-confrontational, so emailing the CEO and walking out was a big move for me. But by that point, it was either walk out or throw myself off the top floor, so I elected to walk out. The statements I made about my performance are ones that were told to me, most of which by the same quality manager who fired me. She was actually quite a nice person and quit just a few weeks before I did and offered me a reference because I know she saw what I was going through and was hoping I'd quit too. I know I'm not the perfect coworker, but at the minimum, I try to do a good job. When I say I was too good at the business verification position, I mean I'm too good at assuaging the concerns of a retiree who just spent several $1,000s on things that were essentially worthless. I didn't enjoy being good at that, but I was. The salespeople would always try to get the verification call sent to me because they knew I'd be able to get it done. A few people have questioned the reality of this post, which honestly surprises me. I thought my story was quite tame, all things considered, but everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I'm open to questions, but I am trying to maintain the anonymity of the company. Not because I want to, just because I know they have a social media department that monitors reviews and things about the company. Am I the jerk for not wanting to change my last name to my husband's to-be? Info. I'm an American citizen now, but not American born. Have dual citizenship. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 5.5 years. Back in January, he proposed and I said yes. Everything was great and we were really happy. 20 days ago, we were discussing where to go for our honeymoon. And then he said, right after we get back, you should go and have your name changed. And I asked, my name changed? What do you mean? He said since I was becoming Mrs., his last name, I had to have my name changed legally. And I said, no. Here's where the argument began. I told him I don't want to change my name. I understand this is customary in the US, but it isn't where I grew up, and I'm happy with my family name. I don't want to change it. I also told him that even if I wanted to, legally, my country of origin only allows very specific cases in which you can change your surname, and marriage isn't one of them. He thinks I'm making it up and also said that isn't true because I'm an American citizen, that I should change my American name. I haven't resigned to my first citizenship, and honestly, carrying 2 passports with different names sounds like problems waiting to happen. I proposed what I felt was a middle ground option, to hyphenate my surname, but he says that's not what he wants. He wants me to change my name full stop. The reason? This is what every woman in my family has always done. And at the very end, he throws, I'm sure you would have done it for your ex, and this was really unexpected to me. Ex-boyfriend and I broke up in 2013 and never got back together, and boyfriend had never made any comments like this before. He had never seemed jealous about him or anything. I've made many attempts to talk to him about the whole surname thing, about ex-boyfriend, which I still don't get, and overall because I feel there's more here than just a name change, but he won't talk to me at all. He has only spoken to say 2 things. 1, he regrets telling me anything, because if he had waited until after we got married, I would have had to do it. And 2, he's not talking to me until I stop this and agree to change my name. 20 days have passed at this point, and I'm becoming impatient. I would have understood 2 days, maybe, to cool off and abstain from saying things you don't mean just because you're angry, but 20 days seems too many. It always makes me wonder if this is a preview of what awaits in our marriage. Whenever we disagree, he's gonna stop all communication until I give up and do what he wants. I'm no relationship expert, but that sounds like manipulation. To be honest, I'm not even sure I want to marry him at all now, but maybe I'm being too dramatic. Of course, his family thinks I'm a jerk, and my friends are split. Some think he's being childish and borderline manipulative. Others think since I'm in the US, I should accommodate to what is customary here. So, Reddit, am I the jerk? Well, who do you agree with? Do you agree with OP or with her boyfriend? Please let us know.
I wish I had a last name. Everyone just calls me Karen.
Sir, those brake pads were installed upside down. This was probably 10 years ago at this point, but I worked at an auto parts store right out of technical college. We sold brake pads with a lifetime warranty. The warranty covers manufacturing issues as well as long-term wear. You wear those brake pads down from normal use, you can buy new ones and bring back the old ones for the warranty, or bring us the old ones and we can swap them out right there. What is not covered is improper use, installing on something other than the vehicles the pads were intended, modifications to the pads, or as in this case, improper installation. Cast. We've got mechanic, the mechanic guy who purchased and apparently installed the pads. We've got me, we've got my boss, and we've got my coworker, who was a master mechanic at a car company with a blue logo before a motorcycle accident prevented him from actually working on cars anymore. I say that all because he's the guy who would know what he's talking about. He was also in the back of the store and didn't hear any of the interaction. Mechanic guy comes in with the brake pads he purchased a short time ago. They are not at all usable anymore. He bought our top-of-the-line ceramic brake pads. These pads were a fairly new product in our store at the time, and we didn't know how they actually performed. But they were marketed as the best ceramic pads you could buy for everyday driving, as well as a little high-speed fun on the weekends. So to have them go bad in a short amount of time was odd to be sure. Mechanic. These pads are garbage. I bought them a few months ago, and they're already trashed. And they ruined my rotors. You guys need to give me new pads and pay for my rotors too. I explained that we're sorry about the issue, and we'd be glad to help in any way we can and blah blah blah. I take a look at the pads and immediately notice the odd wear pattern. It looks like the pads were installed upside down. Me. Sir? These pads look like they were installed upside down. Mechanic. Upside down? No, I am a mechanic. I have been working on cars for longer than you've been alive. This goes on for a hot minute, but the conversation followed those lines. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Threatens my job, blah blah blah. Boss man hears the commotion and steps in to try to calm things down. Boss man. Hi sir, what seems to be the issue here? Mechanic. This punk seems to think he knows better than me and claimed I installed my brake pads upside down. Boss man. Sir, the wear pattern on these pads shows that they were installed upside down. With that being the case, unfortunately, we cannot warranty the pads out. The warranty does not cover improper installation. Mechanic. What kind of a store is this? Is this how you treat all your customers? Blah blah blah, you know the drill. Boss man. Sir, if it would make you feel better, we do have an employee who was a master mechanic for this car company and keeps his automotive service excellence certifications current. Would you like him to take a look? Mechanic. Absolutely. Get someone up here with a brain. Boss man. Hey, coworker, can you come up here for a second? Coworker. Yeah, boss. Walks up to the counter. What's up? Boss man. Coworker, do you notice anything odd about these brake pads? Coworker. Yeah, looks like they were installed upside down. Mechanic guy is fuming at this point. He finally leaves with no new pads and no new rotors. My coworkers and I had a pretty good laugh about that, as well as a conversation about how the heck he installed the pads upside down. Some context. I did look like a punk. I was 18 to 20 years old, long shaggy hair, and was fresh out of mechanic school. I was in no way assuming I knew everything about cars. I just noticed the wear pattern and the notches worn out that indicated that the pads were installed upside down. ASE certifications are needed to get a job at any reputable mechanic shop. Getting one is tough, and getting multiple takes specialized training and studying. Master mechanic certifications are even tougher to get because you need specialized training from a specific company. So coworker absolutely knew what he was talking about. Anyone who has done a brake job before, it's really not that hard if you have the right tools and a little know-how, knows it's pretty difficult to put new pads on an old caliper the right way. The pads and caliper are literally curved with the curvature of the brake rotor. How this guy got them on upside down is beyond me. Am I the jerk for telling my mom I don't care about her opinion on my Star Wars wedding and uninviting her? I, 25 female, met my fiance, 24 male, at Comic-Con 5 years ago when he was cosplaying Han Solo and needed a Princess Leia for a photo. We're engaged and set to get married in November. We're still huge Star Wars nerds, and we decided to pay homage to that, as it was even how we met in our wedding. The bridesmaids and groomsmen in Jedi outfits. I'll be walking down the aisle to the Imperial March rather than the Bridal March, and we'll have a lightsaber fight instead of a first dance, etc. I made a point not to take any money from my family members so that they wouldn't get a say in who's invited / what the wedding looks like, because I expected some sort of protest. When we talked with our families and friends about it, everyone was mostly on board, especially my dad, who says this will be the best wedding he's ever attended. My mom was very involved with my brother's wedding, but seemed to be showing no interest in mine except for making snide comments on my choices. I love her, so it hurt. I asked her why she didn't want to be involved at my house during planning, and she said that she felt I was disrespecting God's holy covenant of marriage and ruining your special day by making it some weird joke, and I should be more like my brother, who did a more traditional wedding if I wanted her to be involved. I was upset. I told her I really wanted to include her in the festivities, but my fiance and I wouldn't change any of our plans because of what she said, and I don't care for her concept of a wedding. Then she lost it. She said that she had hoped once I talked to her about it, I'd realized what I was doing was wrong. She threatened not to come to the wedding or let my dad come either, and I was appalled. I snapped back at her. If you refuse to be happy for me having the wedding of my dreams, then I refuse to invite you. She looked betrayed and left crying. My fiance is 100% on my side, but a lot of my family is now saying that my wedding sounds stupid and I should have listened to my mom. My dad says I should have tried empathizing with my mom for her missing out on her dreams for her daughter. I'm conflicted. She's never disliked my fiance, but now she's telling my family nasty things about how he ruined my wedding. I might have come off as too harsh, but I was jealous. My mom didn't seem to care about this huge deal in my life just because it had an unconventional theme. Even my dad, who was a huge fan of the plan, is saying I should have changed it up for my mom to be happy. My brother and my sister-in-law say I owe it to my mom to give her the satisfaction of seeing her daughter at a perfect wedding. Reddit, am I the jerk for uninviting mom because she didn't approve of my wedding theme? Well, what do you think? Do you agree with OP or with her mom? Please let us know. And if you got to go, who would you dress up as?
I would dress up as Palpatine and show them the true power of the dark side.
Pass me for manager promotion and hire your useless credit-stealing friend? I'll destroy your career. So the story. Dave, not his real name, has been working for an IT programming company for just over 9 years, getting a good rep as a hard worker, and all his colleagues knew him and can trust him to be a big help in times of trouble, like during big difficult projects for major clients. Dave's manager, John, was planning to retire and thought Dave would be a good replacement, so put his name forward as a recommendation and started showing him the ropes of his potential new job just to give him a glimpse of what he may be asked to undertake. A month later, John puts in his notice of retirement and Dave's department manager, Michael, starts the interview process. Some character info. Whilst John was a good manager, very people-friendly, Michael was not. All Michael cared about was numbers and reports. He didn't even know who most of his staff was, nor did he have very much interaction with them. Back to the story. Michael had started the interview to fill John's position, Dave being one of the interviewees, and Dave thought the interview went really well. A few nervous months later, Michael announces the new manager. It's an outside employment, not an internal promotion. Dave was disappointed, but brushed it off as, there is always someone better for the job. But in less than a week, he realized just how wrong he was. The new manager, Darren, was below useless. He didn't even know how to spell computer program, let alone write one. Turns out he was old friends with Michael, and Michael had helped him fabricate his resume to get the job. The news quickly spread to all the programmers, but there was nothing they could do, as Michael was the person all complaints had to go through, and he buried all of them. So no one above Michael knew of Darren's incompetence. Darren from day one had been pushing all his work onto others and then claiming credit for their work they had done, getting bonuses for completed work he didn't deserve. Darren spent his days watching movies, napping, playing games, and occasionally pretending to be a manager when the need arose, but never wrote a single line of code. After 3 months of this, the extra workload was starting to affect Dave and others, but talking to Michael would do nothing, so Dave devised a plan to sort it out. Time for the pro revenge. Dave had talked with all the other programmers and agreed next time Darren pushed a major project onto them to purposely sabotage the work. Not in a big way, just enough to cause some bugs and glitches that will really light a fire under Michael and Darren. It took about another month, but a really big project came in. Immediately, Darren started pushing his work onto others and stealing credit, so the plan was put into action. It was easy to accomplish, especially as Darren had no clue about coding and Michael didn't care as long as the project was done in good time. The project was done, saved, and sent to the client, with almost all of the major work credit being stolen by Darren. It took less than 2 days for the client to call back, complaining about how the new program had damaged his system and was wreaking havoc on his company. The client wanted it fixed and a full refund. The bosses were mad at Michael. Michael tried to shift the blame onto Darren. Darren tried to shift the blame onto the programmers. Dave and the programmers just pointed out that the program wasn't their project and denied any involvement in its development, which brought the attention back to Darren. The fallout. With the bosses coming down on Darren for what happened, he confessed he lied on his resume and he ratted out Michael about how he had helped him fabricate it. Dave and the programmers denied any wrongdoing, just stating Darren must have damaged the program somehow. Michael and Darren were promptly fired and replaced. Dave and the rest fixed the errors that Darren had created, and the client was happy. In the end, Dave didn't get the promotion, but left the company a year later for a better job. Am I the jerk for not letting my son buy a computer with the money he saved up on? My son, who's 15, last year asked about getting a gaming computer. My son has the tendency to really want something for around a week, but then drop it after I say he can't have it. He asked about building a computer, and we talked about it. We agreed on a budget of around $1,000. I told him if he could save up, he could get it. Fast forward a year later, and he did save up $1,000. The only reason I had even talked about a budget was to humor him for a while. He came into me and my husband's room and basically did a presentation on what he was going to buy. I asked him what would the cost be, and he said $1,100. He does have around $1,300 in his account. I shut it down immediately. He's 15 and needs to save for a car. Me and my husband both think that $1,100 is outrageous. He has an Xbox if he wants to play games, and he also has a Chromebook for schoolwork. He tells me that it's not that simple, but $1,100 is crazy. I told him that he could spend $500, and now he won't leave his room because I lied to him and got his hopes up. I just know that $1,100 is way too much. He can get a nice computer for $500. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is she in the right? Please let us know. No anniversary gift? I'm calling the cops. I love my mom, and it's taken me a while, and reading a lot of the posts here, to realize I have things to post here too. This happened in August 2017. I had been busy with work for several weeks, and I forgot to send a card or gift to my mom for her and my stepdad's anniversary. However, on the date of the event, I sent text messages and pics, wishing them all the best, and figured that would suffice and Mumsy would understand. Apparently, she did not. The next day was a Sunday, and I had been super exhausted from several weeks of working 10 to 12-hour days, so I skipped church and opted to sleep in with my phone's ringer turned off. I finally woke up around 1 p.m. and decided to just bum around the house. My hubby was super understanding and agreed to make food runs as needed so I wouldn't have to cook or anything. I happened to grab my phone to text a friend of mine and noticed that it was ringing, so I answered it. The person on the other end identified himself as a state trooper and notified me that I was about to be visited by local police for a welfare check. Very confused, I asked him why and who would need to be checking up on me, as my husband was in the same room with me and I was clearly okay because I answered the phone. The state trooper politely just asked me to answer the door and comply with the policeman's requests and to have a photo ID ready for verification purposes. About 20 minutes later, a local policeman shows up at my door and asks me to show my photo ID. I complied, and he asked me why I hadn't called my mother recently. I couldn't help myself from replying that I had been busy and, oh yeah, I was just shy of my 43rd birthday for Pete's sake. He stated that she had contacted several levels of law enforcement within my state. She's in another state, nearly 1,200 miles away, by the way, which is why he was dispatched to my home. I thanked him for his follow-up. Not his fault he was there after all, and promised to call my mom. He left. I went back in my house, and looking at my phone, I noticed that I had 32 missed calls in the span of 2 hours. What the heck? My voicemail was completely full. I decided to call my mom before even listening to the voicemails for fear another cop would get dispatched to my residence. I called Mom and asked if she was okay. She didn't even say hello. She just blurted out,
I didn't get an anniversary gift from you, so I assumed you were dead.
I couldn't help but reply, sorry to disappoint. I asked her if she had gotten my text messages wishing her a happy anniversary, and she just said,
Oh yeah, I don't check my phone that much.
but she used it to call me repeatedly and to harass several different law enforcement agencies 5 states away. I politely advised her that I felt it would have been more appropriate for her to have received an anniversary gift from her husband than her daughter, and if she felt the gift was lacking, she should take it up with him. I hung up before she could respond and ignored the rest of her calls and texts that day. I finally listened to the voicemails. As I expected, the more voicemails she left, the angrier they sounded. Not full of concern, not worried that something was legitimately wrong, not even a trace of alarm for my well-being. No, just angrier and angrier that she thought I was ignoring her. She had left 8 voicemails before one from a state trooper advising me they would make one more attempt to reach me before alerting local police. Then Mom left 2 more after that before my voicemail was full. None of my mom's voicemails indicated that she had contacted authorities to hunt me down. The last 4 mentioned not sending any anniversary present and were the most angry sounding. That was over 2 years ago, and it's taken me a little time to move past it. Now it's a running joke between us, and every time I get her voicemail instead of her, I simply leave this message. Hi Mom, it's me. I'm just calling you so you don't call the cops, and hang up. Whenever she returns the call, I like to answer with, still not dead. But she doesn't find that as funny as I do, which is why I do it.
Either you give us grandchildren, or we're taking you off our will. This title sounds bad. The story is even worse. I never thought I would be writing a post about my own parents here, but here we are, right? For context, my fiance and I have been in a relationship for the past 10 years and just recently got engaged. While it's understandable that 10 years might sound a bit too much, we started dating really early, and getting married was not a priority for either of us. We actually preferred to focus on our studies and career for a while. She's a civil engineer, and I'm a medical student after getting a bachelor's and a master's. I do freelancing as a developer to pay for my living expenses. As we have been a couple for a long time, it's quite common for people to ask us when we're getting married and when we're having kids. While we're getting married, as soon as I finished med school, we decided not to have children a long time ago, and we're still very certain of that decision, as both of us are more career than family-oriented. However, since the engagement, our families have started to put more pressure on us to get married soon and have kids, even though we told them plenty of times that's not going to happen. My fiance and I live together, and we're completely independent from our families financially. Some time ago, during a video chat, we ended up getting into a heated argument with our families for finally snapping at their ceaseless nagging for grandchildren, and we have been strained ever since. Now, our families asked us to meet them for a lunch, in family, at my parents' house. We don't live in the same city, but it's close enough that we can go there for something like this, and that's when the following situation transpired. We arrived early enough to help out in preparing everything for lunch, and for the next hour or so, things were pretty alright. But after we had had lunch and we sat at the coffee table to chat, it's customary here, the room got visibly tense. Our parents, both hers and mine, started a speech about how much they put into us, how much they worked for us, and how much family means to them. I was already sensing some crappy thing coming, but I kept listening. Suddenly, they said that during one of their talks, they came to a decision that if my fiance and I didn't give them grandchildren, after all they had done for us, we would be cut off of their wills. The reasoning was this. 1. My brother is a gay man, and as of now has no intention of adopting or any alternative to have kids, and I was the only option on continuing the family. He was not there and is as mortified as I am. 2. She is the oldest sister. Her younger sister is still in high school, and thus must set an example by having a family and continuing the family. Now, if that's not psychotic, I have no clue what is. We quickly looked between ourselves and immediately left the house. Haven't spoken to them since, but as far as we're aware, we're disowned by now. I never thought I would have to go through that just because I don't want to have kids, but it just shows how much entitlement they think they have. Edit. I did not expect this to grow so much in just a few hours. Thank you everyone for the replies. Sadly, I don't think I'll be able to respond to everyone, so I'll just clear a few things here. My fiance and I have absolutely no interest in their inheritance. We've been fine on our own for a long time and we can take care of ourselves. Thus, we have absolutely no intention of contesting their will. We don't need that money and we don't want it. I only posted this here due to the absurdity of their actions. We have decided to cut contact with them and uninvited them from our wedding. My brother is giving us full support on this, and as he is my best man, this already means the world to me. It's regrettable that it came to this outcome, but we are not going to let them run our lives. Some people asked us why we don't want to have kids. There's a few reasons for that, especially the fact that we both are extremely focused on our careers. Having a kid is a responsibility to raise someone and give them the affection, lessons, and times needed. Neither of us want to go through that just to birth someone. Also, we have firm beliefs that the world already has people enough without us putting someone else on it. Lastly, neither of us really likes kids. As bad as that might sound, we have no intention of ever giving birth to one. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you have kids just to make your parents happy? Please let us know.
After all we've done for our kids, the least they can do is give us grandbabies.
Am I the jerk for climbing in the window of my dad's house? My parents are divorced, and because of the custody agreement, I am supposed to be at my dad's for every other week. My mom dropped me off outside his house, and I went to the door and the key didn't work. I banged on the door and rang the doorbell, and nobody came to the door. The house seemed empty. My phone had died, and my mom had left because she was dropping me off on her rush to work. The locks on the doors were new, but it was hot as heck out, and my dad was supposed to have custody, so I thought it would be fine to come in the window, like I was supposed to be there. I climbed in the bathroom window that he always leaves open. I slid the screen up carefully and came in without breaking anything. This is my childhood home. I've climbed in that window plenty of times. Heck, when I was little and playing outside, I'd come through the window as a fun shortcut to use the bathroom. I went towards my bedroom and there was some random lady in the hallway who was freaked out. She was scared by me being there and I was like, "I live here. I'm Mitch's daughter. Who the heck are you?" And she left the house without saying anything. I went around the house and my dad was not there. Edit. A few people asked why I was so rude to say, "Who the heck are you?" It's because my dad has remarried. He has a wife who is away this month caring for her elderly parents. And I came home to see a random lady looking like she had slept over at the house, coming out of my dad's room, wearing my dad's pajamas. It didn't look good. And that's why I was so angrily asking questions. So he got home and he was mad as heck at me for breaking in and scaring a lady he was friends with. Apparently, my mom and him had miscommunicated about drop-off time, and he was supposed to meet us in the afternoon and give me a copy of the new keys. It was supposed to be after his lady friend had left. And I was like, okay, so it was your mistake and my mom's mistake. Why are you mad at me for coming in rather than sitting out in 95-degree heat for who knows how long? And he was just so mad that I acted threatening to his friend, that she was scared by me banging on the door and screaming, then suddenly showing up inside the house when she had no idea who I was. I said that if he's having ladies over and they're over at a father's house, they better darn well expect a kid around it. They're pretty dumb. Am I the jerk for climbing in the window of my dad's house? What would you have done? Would you have sat outside or climbed through the window? Please let us know.
That dad sounds interesting. I'd love to meet him.
Entitled mom calls the police over my clothesline. This takes place in my hometown. A house had been built right next to ours over the course of the past year and a half, and a small family moved into it. We never met the family, as we are usually not ones to go out of our way to meet people, so it came as a huge surprise when this happened. We have a backyard, which is private. It's surrounded by a fence with a locking gate. Entitled mom's house had a deck that overlooked our backyard. Midwinter, our dryer decided to die, and we had to take all our clothes to the closest laundromat to dry at least once a week. Once spring rolled around, I decided to put a clothesline in our backyard to help save money. A few weeks went by, and at least once a week, I would be out there hanging loads of laundry to dry. On one such occasion, our neighbor, entitled Mom, was out on her deck talking on her phone. I paid her no mind and just hung my clothes to dry. As I was heading back inside, I heard the dreaded banshee screech that was entitled Mom. Entitled Mom.
Hey, boy!
I'm a woman, but I have my hair cut short with most of it buzzed, so I can see why she assumed I was a boy. I looked over, mostly because of the noise she made, not because I thought she was talking to me, but unfortunately she was.
You can't hang those out here.
Me. What? My clothes?
Yeah, you can't hang your filthy underwear out here, where I have to look at them. What if my kids see?
Me. Lady, it's my backyard. If I want to hang my laundry to dry in my backyard, I can. And with that, I flipped her the universal sign to go forget yourself and went inside. About a half hour later, I hear a knock on my door. When I answer it, there is a police officer standing at my door. Officer: "Good afternoon, ma'am." He knew I was a woman, and yet somehow Entitled Mom didn't. "We received a call about a creep in this residence trying to flash people. Would you happen to know anything about this?" Me: "Seriously? Entitled Mom was just screaming about me hanging my underwear on my clothesline out back. I assure you, nothing else is happening." Officer: "Do you mind if I take a look?" Me, with nothing to hide: "Of course." I showed the officer my clothesline, and we could clearly see Entitled Mom glaring at us with a smug look on her face from her deck. The officer thanked me, went to speak with Entitled Mom, and that was that. I sued my boss because he fired me for wanting to attend a concert. During my gap year between studies, I decided to work for Company Inn. Company Inn was run by a husband, Dave, and wife, Karen, with their son, and basically treated their staff like a small family. All was well for about 2 months, until I realized I had to ask for a day off since I wanted to attend the last Slayer concert the band would give in my country. There was about a month to go, so I sent an email asking for the day off and explaining why. This is where everything started to go downhill. I got a reply from the Karen, and her reply was weird. She stated that's not how asking for a day off works. I was confused, to say the least. Not sure what to do. I thought she wanted a more formal way of asking, so I wrote a more formal email asking for the day off. She shot an email back. I really had to think it through what I was doing, which made even less sense to me. But I was hopeful since I never got a specific no. The next workday rolls around. I arrived, locked up my bike, and headed inside ready for work. I immediately started looking for Dave to ask for answers. Before I could even open my mouth, he asked me, "Do you still want to go to that concert?" I didn't expect him to ask this so quickly. I answered, yes. The only thing he said back was, "Okay, take off your vest and you can go home." I was stunned, and while the words started to sink in, I looked at my colleagues, which were just preparing for the opening. When it finally sank in, anger flowed in. I am not a confrontational person, so I simply took off my vest and gave it to Dave. Without a word, I left and started biking home. When I got home, I told my mother what had happened. We started sending emails for extra information and got very Karen-like emails back. After a couple emails, which went basically nowhere, I looked up the laws for immediate dismissal. After reading up about it, I learned that in my country, someone can only be immediately fired when caught stealing, frauding, the person isn't able to do the work, or refusal to do the work. I did neither of these. A day or two later, I met with my attorney and began the steps to sue Company Inn. I told my lawyer what happened in detail, and he was very confident I was in my right and she was not. So after trading even more emails between the three of us, we went to small claims. I came prepared in a suit with my attorney in tow, and Karen showed up alone. I guess she assumed she won because she thought she was in her right. The trial began, and I was as professional and objective as I could be. Karen did the same. Well, for about half of the trial. When she realized evidence was piling up against her, she resorted to calling me a spoiled brat, among other things I don't know the English translations for. I'm safe to say that was the point the judge ruled in my favor. As per usual, I had to wait a month before I got the verdict, black on white in the mail, but I won. It may have taken about 6 months from the moment I was told to go home to the point those 6 months of pay were transferred to my bank account, but it was 100% worth it. In the end, I went to the concert. It was the most awesome and most profitable concert I have ever been to in my life. Speaking of Slayer, what's your favorite band? Please let us know. My favorite bands are the ones that go... Am I the jerk for logging into my sister-in-law's accounts and taking a post about me and my daughter down? I am a mother to a 7-year-old. For various reasons, there are several people who I do not want having any form of access to her, and that includes photos and social media. I don't post about having a daughter, keep my profiles professional, and don't post photos with her in them. I'm not an idiot. I know once my daughter is old enough for social media, she will put pictures of herself online, and by then we will have had a serious talk about internet safety, the kind of talk I can't have with a 7-year-old. I've been with my fiance for 3 years now, and a few weeks ago he proposed. We told his sister yesterday over a video call. My daughter was with us on the call. My sister-in-law has known my daughter since she was 4. She's really good with her, and she knows the rules about social media. I've had to remind her of these rules more than once because sister-in-law runs a mummy blog, and her daughter is only a couple of months older than mine, and the two are good friends. So if she takes photos of her kid and mine is in the photos, I ask her to crop my kid out. She has thousands of followers on her blog and social media and is popular enough to have been sponsored a few times. but she's not anywhere near living off of it and has a 9-to-5 job. A few hours after the video chat was over, I got a notification for sister-in-law's blog. Sister-in-law has posted about our engagement, and alongside it, she's put a screenshot of us mid-call with my daughter showing off the ring and cross-posted it to all her social media, where she's tagged us in it, and the post is a long piece that makes clear that my daughter isn't my fiance's child. This is the exact thing I don't want on the internet. Proof that I have a daughter alongside my name and picture, posted by someone in my fiance's family with a massive following on 5 different websites. I untagged myself from what I could, but my full name, first, middle, and last name was on the post and still searchable. We called sister-in-law and asked her nicely to take the post down. She refused. My fiance then asked her not so nicely, but she refused again and hung up on us. I had a minor freakout, and my fiance said his sister had the same password for everything when they were kids, so if I wanted, he could try and get in and take the post down himself. I said yes. The password was the same, so he logged in and took it all down, then texted sister-in-law saying what we had done and that he had hoped it wouldn't come to this. She's furious with us and made a whole new post about how we hacked her account. And since then, it's been non-stop messages from her as well as my fiance's immediate family saying we overreacted, invaded her privacy, and that we should have just asked her again to take it down before going nuclear. Are we the jerks? Update. Spoke to a lawyer who has a cease and desist ready to go when/if we need it, and said that if sister-in-law did pursue legal action, she'd come off way worse than us and we'd get off close to scot-free by comparison. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you log in and delete it, or keep trying to convince sister-in-law to do it herself? Please let us know. I dare you to log into my blog. I don't work here, lady. Why do you think you were able to find me so easily? Used to do construction and remodeling, which meant going to big box hardware stores. If I were working outside or with an annoying client, I would wear a blaze orange shirt. So one of many days, I found myself at Home Depot looking for a MacGuffin, or what's it, to finish a job I was on. This particular day, I ran into a buddy and was talking a bit. We wandered a bit, looking for our required Wikideckers, and found his first. Told him it was good catching up, and turned to walk away. Chaz. Yo, employee. I didn't work there, so not talking to me, so I kept walking. Chaz. Hey, stupid, guy in the orange shirt, yo. So I turned to see who he's going to yell at, and here he is, getting up in my personal space. Me. Hi? Chaz. When I talk, you listen, jerk. Me. Okay. Chaz. Where do I find faucets? Me. In plumbing, I would assume. I think it's 2 or 3 aisles that way. Well, show me then. You guys are so useless, I don't know why I bother shopping here. Me. Huh? Chaz. You brought that other guy over. You're gonna take me. I look over his shoulder, and there's Johnny laughing at me. Me. Hey, Johnny, how do you quote for something like this? Like 2-hour minimum, plus transit and supplies? Cause I could really go for some beers. Chaz. What? It's your job. Me. I mean, 70 an hour, 2-hour minimum, 4 miles to the liquor store, $18 for a rack of Coors. Shall I call my bookkeeper and set up an appointment? Chaz, spitting mad now. I need it now. Me. Oh, a rush job. Well, that's gonna be a premium. Let me call the office. I think it's $150 per day ahead of when we can schedule it. Chaz. You wait until I find your boss. You're done for. You'll never work here again. Me. You're talking to the boss right now. Would you like a card? We mostly specialize in basement finishing and remodeling, but I got a guy with experience in picking stuff up from the store for me. Chaz. But you're wearing orange. You helped that guy. Me. Yeah, you're at a Home Depot and you found me talking to a friend. Obviously, I don't work here if you were able to find me. Chaz made some comments at me about being full of crap and told me I was done for when my manager heard about this. On the way out, I saw Chaz yelling at the store manager and pointing an angry finger towards me. Manager shrugged, and I could see him shaking his head and probably explaining reality to him. I had to buy my own beer that day. Am I the jerk for giving up on having a relationship with my sister? My sister, 25, and I, female, 23, were best friends our whole lives and did everything together. A year after she started dating her now husband, who's 33, she moved out to be closer to him. Her husband is one of those guys who debates everyone about everything. The way it comes off to me is that he's never looking for a common ground or solution to an idea or a problem. He just wants to make you feel stupid. We very rarely had conversations where I walked away seeing him in a positive light. While they were dating, she would consistently come to me crying because he spoke rudely to her, offended her, spoke down to her. After every fight, she seemed resolved to break up, but they never did. Despite having only dated for one semi-tumultuous year, they decided to get married. My mother objected to this decision and asked if they would at least wait a year because we needed more time to get to know him and hopefully like him. Very little effort was made to get us all together and bond. Also, my mom preferred that my sister graduated college first before tying the knot. They refused to wait, and my mother was uninvited to the wedding. It's been a year since they've been married, and my sister has tried to reach out and reconnect. We all spent 3 days trying to talk it out and heal things. Every time we speak to her, things go well. After we hang up with her, she calls back saying her husband doesn't like what happened, he's furious, and we need to talk again. So we go over everything again, and it's like he refuses to let us back into her life. They subscribe to a form of Christianity that we weren't raised with. They believe that the husband gets to decide everything in their lives, including whether or not she's allowed to come visit us. After I patched things up with her again, he called me back and said I was no longer allowed to call her phone. If I wanted to speak to her, I had to call his phone and asked for her. I ask him what he wants, and he says things like, "I want you to respect our union." I don't know what that means. Then he said, "You can't have a good relationship with her unless you have a good relationship with me. We are one." So I'm supposed to pretend to like him, I guess? It's like a hostage situation. I can tell my dad wants me to open myself up to all this drama again just because she's my sister, but I feel like it doesn't matter what I do. Her husband will always say I can't have a relationship with her, and honestly, I like her less because she's allowed this to happen and won't stand up for us. Am I the jerk? Edit. I forgot to clarify that in our last 2 conversations, I told her that I care about her and that she can contact me whenever she needs to get away from him. The manager thinks she can control my breaks. So this happened like the other day. I had a large shipment and it was taking me several hours to get everything out. I had been at the store since 7:30 a.m. and it was now 11:30. I was down to 3 boxes when I decided that I just really needed a break. My company's policy is that if you are going to take a break for more than 10 minutes, you have to clock out. Since it was near lunchtime, I figured I would take an early lunch. Also, the rule of thumb with my company is that lunch breaks should not be longer than 1 hour. I take my card into the stockroom, tell the receiving clerk, who we shall call Sarah, an older woman who can be a jerk sometimes, but not as much as the manager, Karen. I tell Sarah that I'm going to eat some lunch and that I should be back in about 30 minutes. There's a nice restaurant that you order takeout from. Sarah then tells me this. Sarah: "Oh, Karen said that you can only take breaks when she says to." Me: "Excuse me?" Sarah: "This is just what she told me. You have to finish up your shipment before you leave. I'm just the messenger." Just a little side note. At this store, they hate it when vendors leave boxes overnight. I don't normally leave the store until all of my boxes are gone, but if I'm super tired, I will leave the store and go home. But normally I'll just go take a break. Sarah: "Karen said you cannot take breaks on your own time." Me: "What? I'm not going to listen to her. I'll take my breaks whenever the heck I want." Sarah: "You'll have to speak to Karen about this. Like I said, I'm just the manager." Me: "I know, Sarah, but Karen doesn't give me my paycheck." Sarah: "Well, if you need to talk to Karen about this new policy, take it up with her. She says it applies to all employees." Me: "But I don't work for her. She knows that I work for Greeting Card Company. Does this apply to other vendors?" Sarah nods, and I am livid. I tell her that I will be speaking to my boss about this, and hopefully it will not cause drama, because I am so done. We don't discriminate here, ma'am. First post here, but I never thought I'd have to since Karens are uncommon in our poor country. This was just a few hours ago, and it didn't happen to me, but I was there when it did. There's this small supermarket I pass by on my daily commute. It's a small 2-cashier lane, higher price store that's located right beside a rich gated community. Anyways, I frequent this store just to get their imported sodas that aren't commonly found elsewhere. It was a slow day, and there were 2 people in front of me in the payout while the other lane was closed. Understandable, as there were only 3 paying customers. Here enters the cast. We've got me. We've got poor guy. We've got Karen. We've got the store clerk. Here I was, just waiting for my turn and looking out the window, and when I look back, a Karen had somehow teleported beside me as if to take my spot. I look at her directly and step back in line as the guy before me moves. I was now second in line, with only 2 bottles to buy, but I hear an irritated huffing noise. Poor guy walks by, wearing an electrician's overalls colored orange and gray. All the store employees wore black pants, a white shirt, and a black apron. The Karen grabs his arm and complains, "Why are you people not opening the other cashier? It's a big lane, and you're making us wait. She spoke English, but we're in Asia. Everybody here speaks English fine, but it's kind of snobbish in a casual setting. Poor guy says in our language, "Sorry, ma'am, but I'm also just a customer." Karen, "Oh, sorry. She sounded sincere. Poor guy bows his head twice and walks away to get stuff. Meanwhile, she looks back, irritated, and finds store clerk to question. "Hey, why is there only one lane open? We're waiting here. And besides," points with her lips to poor guy, "why do you let people like that in here?" I turn back as I hear this. The store clerk, with dead eyes as if having to put up with this regularly, speaks in a solid and clear monotone. Store clerk in our language. "Ma'am, we don't discriminate against selling to less fortunate people here." Everybody stops for a bit, and I stifle a laugh. I turn around to see the second lane open up. I start paying for my 2 bottles, but I hear the Karen place her things sheepishly behind me. I turn around and give her a deadpan look. I take my stuff with a chuckle and walk out. Kudos to you, store clerk. Entitled teacher takes my laptop and accuses me of cheating. So it's exam season, and I'm in the extra care group. This group requires a bit of a boosty during an exam, and for me, I require a laptop and alone space. I have a few psychological issues, and my hands are incredibly shaky constantly, so I use a laptop for all of my exams rather than handwriting it. I have been since year 9, and I'm currently year 13. One major issue with me is I can't think straight unless I talk out loud. I can do this in a hushed whisper, but it's why I have to be alone. I'm seated at the back of a large hall with my computer far away from everyone else, so I can freely explain my thoughts to myself while tapping away. Before I get on with this story, I should explain Mr. M. Mr. M is a high-end teacher with 2 students in this school. Neither are important for this story. Mr. M prioritizes those students heavily and puts them in the best classes whenever he could, the classes I was in. They always got the top marks and were always winners in some sort of contest. I, being the quiet-minded kid who focused much more on daydreaming about Hulk fantasies, didn't care too much about these brats. I just kept on keeping on. Well, until today. I was in my history exam quietly tapping away. I was also whispering to myself as I did it, telling myself what to write as I typed. But I felt something. A very sharp tap. I looked up to see Mr. M glaring at me sharply. I didn't understand what I did wrong, so went back to silently tapping, struggling much more as I'm still very anxious about my thinking issue. Another hard tap. I turn back to him and he hisses some sort of nonsense about me cheating. I remain silent. I would never cheat in an exam. Even if I was struggling so bad, why would he accuse me of it now? The silence persisted until he muttered something about having special treatment and his son requiring the laptop, and before I could respond, he had picked it up and began walking away. Now all of this was done in a very quick and quiet movement. I couldn't react. I just sat in stunned silence. My work was gone. I had been working on this exam for an hour. I wanted to break down and cry. This was all too much for me. I was lucky Mrs. D, the one who was in charge of the exams, quickly noticed my lack of a computer. Mrs. D was the one who gave me the computer in the first place, so she knew something was up. She told me to go with her as she took me outside, where I explained everything. The lack of computer, Mr. M accusing me of cheating, being kicked out of the exam hall, everything. She listened contently, then told me to stay there and went off somewhere. From what I was told from a teacher who heard the commotion, Mrs. D had tore him a new one. She berated him for ruining my exam and stealing my property without any knowledge of my conditions. She eventually returned to me with the laptop and my memory drive. Luckily, he hadn't removed it, and gave me an extra time slip for 15 minutes. Luckily, I was able to get the exam completed, even though it left me a bit shaken up. I haven't seen Mr. M for the rest of the day, and I noticed his class was taken by a sub for this lesson. Maybe some action was taken against him. Update. I got information. Oh boy, have I got a story for you. Turns out he's been confiscating work off others and giving it to his kids to hand in. Mr. M has been removed from the college and is not allowed to teach anywhere in my country's region or the regions nearby. His kids have also been expelled due to constant cheating. He's been replaced on the exam board by a very sweet lady who I had watch over me in my media exam. I need an invigilator near me while working due to some of my issues. I'm very happy I have friends in high places, so I know about all of this and can tell you all. And hopefully, I'll not see him ever again. Other coffee shops work like this, so yours should too. I worked at a gourmet coffee shop a few years ago. If you wanted a coffee, you would order, pay, then I would hand you a cup and you would pour the coffee and add the cream/sugar yourself. Other than having to do the odd sandwich/espresso, it was a pretty easy job. A group of 4 people came in, they're dressed in suits, and just give off that aura of, I'm better than you. 3 of them sit at a table, and the 4th comes up to the register. Me. Hi, can I help you? Him. Hi, I would like 4 coffees, please. Me. Sure, what size? Grande. We're not Starbucks. Oh, do you mean large? Sure, whatever. The first will be decaf, 3 cream. The second, me. Actually, the coffee and cream is on the table right behind you. I put the cups on the counter. Me. You just pour it yourself. Him. You don't pour it for us? Nope, but this way you can make it just the way you like it. Not the first time I've said this. And you can even get a free refill. Him. Can you just do it for us, please? Sorry, that's not how we work here, unfortunately. He huffs. Ugh, well I guess we'll just have to do it ourselves then. He grabs the cups and starts to walk back to his table. Me. Hey, sorry, that's actually going to be $6. Oh, we'll just pay you afterwards. We actually ask for it up front, if you don't mind. Him. We go to that other place up the street all the time. They don't charge us until afterwards. Me. Unfortunately, we're not them. If we get busy, you could easily just walk out without paying. Ugh, fine. He slams down exactly $6. There, are you happy now? Yep, thank you very much. But we are probably never coming back here again. He heads to his table, and I can hear them loudly talking. We have to pour it ourselves? Are they going to pay us to do it? Let's go to the other place next time. As they filled up their coffees, one of them quirked. I guess I'm going to be the employee of the month here now. They stayed for about half an hour and made sure they all refilled their coffees before they left. I quit shortly after that, not because of them, so not sure if they ever came back or not. Entitled Mom tries making me give my spot up for her daughter. So this happened last year, but I didn't have enough comment karma, so here we go. We've got me, we've got Entitled Mom, the Karen, we've got Entitled Kid, and we've got my dad. I had just graduated high school, and I was waiting for responses from the colleges I applied to. Well, the day came, I got my acceptance letter to a good college in my state. Well, my neighbors had a kid who graduated with me and applied to the same college. The only difference is that she didn't get accepted, so she jumped our fence. It isn't high since it was for the dog, and knocked on the door. So I opened it. The conversation goes as follows. Entitled Kid. Hey, did you get into that college? Me. Yeah, I did. Did you? No, because you took my spot. Me. Well, if you had actually tried in high school instead of slacking and turning to drugs, maybe you would have gotten in. Entitled Kid. I got all A's in middle school and high school, thank you, and vaping isn't a drug. Now the funny part is that in middle school, she had advocated against vaping, then ended up doing it a year later. As for the grades part, she started slipping in high school, resulting in her dropping from all of her advanced classes. So I just shook my head and watched her leave. I wasn't affected. She ruined her own life. Her mom and her came back over, and her mom was upset. With a wrath of fury, she knocked on my door. I opened it, having been woken by the knocking, and was pushed down to the ground. Entitled Mom. If you know what's good for you, you'd give up your spot. Me. My spot for the college that I worked towards since I was young? No way. Get out of here, Karen. Entitled Mom. My name is not Karen, and I demand you give your spot to Entitled Kid. Me. Listen, Entitled Mom, it's your daughter's fault for slacking. I'm not giving up my spot for her. My dad had heard screaming after a thud, so he came to see what was going on. When he saw Entitled Mom screaming at me. My dad. What's going on, Entitled Mom? Entitled Mom. Your daughter stole my kid's spot for college. My dad. Oh, you got in. Well, I don't know what to tell you. She got in fair and square. Entitled Mom. No, she did not. She took my baby's spot. My dad. Listen, if you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police. Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid did leave, but not without threatening us first. And as far as I know, the kid still lives there without a job and is not in college. As for her mom, she got the cops called on her for trying to harass my sister. I, however, am enjoying myself with my roommate, who actually is the other person from my grade to make it into the college. As for my family, they're doing better now. My mom is a worker, however, so it's taking a toll on her still. But other than that, we're all good. Edit. Does this seem dramatic? Maybe it is. I'm a dramatic person at times. I probably made this bigger than it should have been, and there were parts cut out that I felt wouldn't fit, like the daughter didn't immediately go home. We talked after that. But I mean, the reason I know she was declined because, well, she set it up there, right? Speaking of college, have any of you guys gone to college? And if you're planning on going, where would you go? Please let us know.
Your mom goes to college.
Standing up to my workplace bully led to unforeseen consequences. Let me start this one out by saying that I fully intended to seek revenge on this person in this story, but the aftershock of the eventual confrontation is what led to the aforementioned consequences rather than by my direct actions. I work in the UK for a large technology company doing software support. I'm part of a team that has members all over the world. I've been in this job for around 10 years, and other than the major issues I've had with this guy, I truly enjoy my job. When I started with the company, I wouldn't say that I was green. I had about 7 years industry experience under my belt. I was definitely inexperienced with the company, but the job that I had been hired to do used technologies that I was more than comfortable with. The point I'm trying to convey here is that I wasn't completely oblivious to all the applications supported by our company. Everyone in my team, around 30 of us, was very nice and was very keen to help, except for Shane. Shane is probably what you'd term as the team guru. About 5 years from retirement, part of the office furniture, metaphorically, as we're all home workers. He had been with the company for nearly 40 years. Everyone labeled Shane as the only guy to go to when you were truly in a bind. When I was initially starting out, I did indeed find that Shane was highly knowledgeable and more often than not had the answers to whatever obscure questions you might have. Things were great and our team ticked over nicely. I got to know the rest of the team well, over the phone, over time too, and my best friend was a woman named Mel. She was of a similar age and experience level as Shane, and in my opinion was just as knowledgeable as him. One day, Mel and I were on a brief call chatting about a work issue when we got to shooting the breeze for a while. We talked about ourselves and also the team. I'd said that I hadn't met everyone face to face yet, and that was when she told me she had once met Shane in person a couple of years ago. They're both based in the US, I'm in the UK, and both got invited to a tech conference in New York. She told me that he has serious health issues due to his weight, around 450 pounds, and when he was home was often on oxygen and medication. His plan was to ride things out until he was able to take early retirement so that he didn't need to worry about paying for his medical insurance anymore. That sounded like a reasonable enough plan to me, and we were soon talking about something else. The issue started about 2 years into my tenure with this company. We started moving in a new direction with what applications we were going to be offering to customers, and towards the end, we were trained in a bunch of new stuff. I saw this as a great opportunity and equalizer. If no one on our team had any experience with this new software, then I would be on equal footing with everyone. This went really well for me, and I put a lot of time and effort into learning as much as possible. Shane didn't show much interest in the new stuff. He still continued to spend most of his time with the legacy tools. In team meetings, you could clearly tell he was getting upset that his status as a guru was gradually becoming more and more meaningless. This wasn't anything personal. We work in software. We have to adapt in order to remain competitive. As time went on, it was becoming clear to the team how much work I was putting in, and I was well on the way to becoming the go-to guy for the new software. During this time, Shane would start sniping at me for anything he could plausibly manage. For example, if I was late to a team meeting because a customer call overran, he'd make sure to interrupt whatever was being said to comment something like, "Oh look, Ordos Deluxe has bothered to grace us with his presence," even though he'd been guilty of the same in the past. Things like email chains too. Almost anything I sent out that included him and our boss on an email, he would reply with some unrelated complaint or observation, completely irrelevant to what was actually being discussed. One day, Mel called me and asked me what my beef with Shane was. I truthfully told her that I had no beef at all with him, and he just seemed to have it in for me. She said that if she managed to find anything out, she'd let me know. Things continued like this for a couple of years. I continued to be the go-to guy, and he continued to try and discredit me and generally paint me in as bad a light as possible. One day, we had a major incident, one that literally could have cost the company millions in SLA fines if it was not solved quickly. Our manager split us into teams to troubleshoot specific areas, and she paired me up with Shane. I wasn't happy about it, but whatever, I was a professional. We got on a call and started working through the issue. As our call progressed, it was becoming abundantly clear why he didn't like me. He knew nothing about the new application. He hadn't done any work on it at all. Everything I asked him to check, he needed hand-holding, even for the most basic of tasks. Eventually, I just shared my screen and said for him to watch me. I went into the guts of the system, through so many logs, explaining to him what I was doing the whole time, and eventually found the problem was with a recent patch we had installed. At this point, he dropped from the call. I don't think anything of this at the time. We use Skype for business and it can be flaky, so I just continued what I was doing. Our process was not to roll back any changes until it had all been approved by the senior manager. As I was the one responsible for deploying/rolling back patches, made some notes about what we needed to do, and then rejoined the main call. I wasn't worried at all because bad patches happened every so often. They just didn't usually have this level of impact. As soon as I did, I got absolutely destroyed by the incident manager. Apparently, Shane had returned to the group call and informed everyone present that the outage was caused by an error that I had made in the deployment process, and that Shane had told me what the correct fix was, and I had refused to implement it then and there. I was furious. He had accurately told them the cause of the problem because it was me who literally demonstrated to him how to find it. I had even foolishly mentioned to him what I thought would fix the problem. Because of how long he had been with the company compared to me, only our immediate team knew the truth about who was really the better skilled person in this situation. His historical reputation still carried a lot of weight with people who didn't work day to day with him. Because this incident was so major, over 100 people were on this call, several of them 2 or 3 levels of management above our team. He made me out to be a reckless, incompetent idiot, and he was believed. Despite my manager's protestations, I was disciplined and given a verbal warning. He, meanwhile, was congratulated for steering the company away from a potential disaster and given a commendation. I was so angry, and a while later, Mel gave me a call. Apparently, Shane had been bragging to her about putting that smart punk in his place. She was shocked and asked him what he was talking about. His real beef was that he thought I had disrespected him by trying to take over his role as go-to guy for the new software. That wasn't my intention at all. I didn't see it as my fault that he was too lazy to do the work again. I lamented with Mel that she should have recorded the call. She laughed and said that Skype shows when you're recording a call, and he'd never have spilled his guts while being recorded. I immediately had a brainwave. I decided that I would confront Shane one-on-one. I pinged him on Skype and said that I wanted to talk. He responded with a smiley and just said, "Sure." I called him and let him know that I was recording this call, and the Skype notification popped up to let all participants know that this call was being recorded. I went right for it and accused him of lying about the major incident and said that it seemed like he had a major beef with me. As expected, he lied and said that he was sorry that I felt like I had to react this way. He said that he would need to talk to our boss about it. I said, "Wait 1 second," and turned off the Skype recorder. I then said that Skype isn't recording and that he knew exactly what he had done. His mask slipped at this point, and he said that he was perfectly in his rights to put me in my place. He said that you need to respect the longer-serving people in jobs like this, and that he would do it again in a heartbeat. I didn't hold back. I called him a dinosaur who refused to move with the times and wanted to coast out his days here without doing any work. He said that he was a couple of years away from retirement, and he'd be darned if he was going to bust his butt for some shiny new software. I said to him, speaking of new software, has he heard of OBS? Of course he hadn't, and I suggested he Google it. I then hung up on him. Not long after, the messages started. He was begging me not to use the secret recording that I had taken. He said that if he gets fired, he will lose his retirement package and his medical benefits. I told him to go forget himself, and that he should have considered that before trying to get me fired. I passed all of this on to the relevant channels before really giving it any thought. Things set in motion, and sure enough, a few weeks later after a company investigation, he was fired. I heard from Mel that he had asked to take early retirement so as to keep his benefits, but this was apparently rejected. It all came out later that apparently he had significant debts and that he was counting on his retirement package to keep him financially afloat. With no job and no package, he had no money to pay for the medical treatment which he badly needed. He was in no state to get himself a new job, and his skills had stagnated so badly that he couldn't even get a new job online. Mel told me that he died about 6 months after this whole incident due to his ongoing health issues. I felt conflicted about this for a while, sharing that recording obviously contributed to his death, but I don't know how bad I feel about it. I'm a young guy trying to build my career, and he actively tried to destroy me. I should maybe have held off when he pleaded for me not to reveal the truth, but he was old enough and wise enough to not engage in the childish games he played. If he had known he'd be dead as a result of this, I'd maybe have done things differently. It's one that stays with me, that's for sure. I'm still at the company, and I can tell you all that I will never treat a new employee the way he treated me. So maybe the breaking of the cycle is the positive to come out of all of this. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate this revenge? Please let us know.
Now that's what I call revenge.
Am I the jerk for not telling my neighbor I had started a college fund for his kid? Full disclosure, I 100% do not think I'm a jerk for this, but they are harping on it, and I am just looking for an independent opinion. I, 36, female, bought a rural property in 2016. This property has a very large yard and a long driveway. I also travel a fair bit for work. I was looking for a service to handle shoveling my driveway in the winter and handle mowing my lawn in the spring, summer, and fall, mostly because I'm gone a lot, but also because I just don't want to have to deal with it. I was talking to my neighbor, R, who said that his son, A, who's 14, was a hard worker and wanted to make some extra cash as he was saving for college. So A and I came to an agreement. Every weekend, he would mow my front and back lawn, and I would pay him $40. In the winter, whenever it snowed, he would come by and plow my driveway. Firm $40 a week, whether or not it snowed. He would just drive on over with his tractor and handle it. It worked very well for 4 years. The kid was a godsend. I foster dogs, and if I had to go out of town unexpectedly, he would come over and feed them and play with them and love on them and just have a grand old time, and he would be compensated accordingly for the extra work. All in all, I've probably paid him $3,000 to $4,000 a year for the work. I made good friends with his folks. I get invited to all the family parties. His older sister had a baby, and I went to the shower. So it's obvious I have a soft spot for this kid. Knowing that he was working so hard to try to afford to go to school, every time I paid him, I would also set aside the same amount and I put it into an envelope. I was invited to a socially distant graduation party earlier this month. He graduated from high school and he's going away to a state school about 2 hours from us next month. I took that envelope full of cash to the bank and I got a check which totaled out a little more than $12,000. I included this check in the card I got him for graduation, and I thanked him very much for helping me all these years and wished him well as he moved on with his life. He was extremely thankful because his mom had been laid off and they were worried about how they were going to pay for school, and they were trying not to let him go into debt. Now the issue. I was worried that his parents would think of this as charity because his mom had been laid off. This plan had been years in the making, and I hadn't mentioned it to them because I didn't want them to count on it if, for whatever reason, I wasn't in the financial position to offer it when the time came. R called me extremely upset that I hadn't told them about the fund prior for 2 reasons. 1, it overshadowed their gift to him, and 2, they had spent so long worrying about how they were going to pay this, and if they had known about what I was doing, it would have saved them a lot of stress and problems. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for giving her neighbor $12,000 to help him pay for college? Please let us know.
How dare she?
Karen thinks I'm faking a migraine because I don't look like I'm in pain. Some backstory for context. I'm a 29-year-old incomplete quadriplegic in a wheelchair with an acquired brain injury. Because of my brain injury, I get chronic migraines. My accident that caused my disability happened in 2007, so I've had a long time to learn how to deal with my migraines. Most of the time, it's just my brain sending pain signals when there isn't actually pain, so now I rarely even notice it. But on days that I do feel it, it can be debilitating. Anyone who suffers from chronic pain might understand the times when other people don't believe you're in pain because you don't look like you're in pain. That's me most of the time. This happened a few years ago when I was out shopping. My migraine was really bad that day, but I had to get some things downtown and I had nobody else to go get them for me. I had most of what I needed, but there were a few other things I needed help to reach. On any other day, I would be able to reach them, but I couldn't move much because of my migraine. There was another customer in the aisle who we'll call Karen. Me. Excuse me, ma'am, could you please grab that for me? Referring to an item that was near her, but slightly out of my reach. Karen, without even turning around.
Get it yourself.
Me. I'm in a wheelchair. Karen, turning around.
So? Why can't you get it?
Me. I have a really bad migraine and can't lift my arms to get it. Karen.
No, you don't. My husband gets headaches sometimes. Just take some medicine.
She obviously didn't know the difference between a headache and a migraine. Me. Already did, but that did nothing. Karen.
Yeah, sure. Stop faking it and get it yourself.
Me, not wanting to make a big deal out of nothing. Don't worry about it. I'll find a staff member. I left to find someone to help me, not knowing why she wouldn't. I'm not saying she had to because she doesn't work there, but it only involved her reaching to the side and passing me the item I wanted. It didn't seem like it would be an issue. I found a staff member to help me get the rest of what I needed. He was a friend of mine and is always happy to help me in any way he can. He knows my situation and the whole story about my disability. When we came back into the aisle, Karen was still there, and the second she saw me, she gave me a dirty look. Karen, talking to the staff member as he got what I needed off the shelf.
You know she's faking it, right? I see her in here all the time, and she can get things herself.
Staff, ignoring Karen and talking to me. Is that all, OP? Is there anything else I can help you with? Me. Yes, please. My migraine is intense today. Staff. I'll sort you out, OP. How about I let you use my staff discount? Me. Thanks, mate. It's hard to get good help around here. Referring to Karen and giving her a smirk as we left. I know that was petty, but I felt like she deserved it. I could see the annoyed look on her face at the words staff discount. It's nice knowing the staff. I know she didn't work there, so it wasn't her job, but some people are such jerks that helping someone is a major inconvenience, even for a second. I wish Karens would be decent human beings. A girl can dream. Am I the jerk for not calling my stepmom mom? For context, I'm now 18 years old. I tried to keep it simple, but sorry if it's confusing. My parents separated when I was 3, and they have always been on good terms, so they shared custody. My mom remarried 2 years after the separation, and so I've grown up with my mom, my dad, and a stepdad. This isn't a cliche stepdad is the bad guy thing. We've always gotten along, and I have always seen it as a bonus to have an extra parent. I have always loved and respected him, and have always told him that. It took a while, but when I was 10, I started calling him dad, which is also the term I use for my biological dad. It took me a while because I wanted to make sure my biological dad was comfortable and also my stepdad. Last year, my dad also remarried to a woman we'll call Shauna. They'd only been dating for 7 months, but Shauna had been a friend of my dad's for years, so they knew each other pretty well. She was my Aunt Shauna for ages. As with my stepdad, Shauna and I have always gotten along. We do clash a little sometimes, but that's more because we're both quite similar in terms of personality. Yesterday night, while cooking together, Shauna turned to me and asked why I didn't call her mom. I responded just by saying, "Because you're not my mom." I admit I could have worded it better, but Shauna got really upset. She started saying how for years she has been like a mother to me, which I admit is somewhat true because she was always in close proximity, like a guardian would be. But again, I just viewed her like an aunt. She then brought up how I called my stepdad dad, so what was the difference? I tried telling her that it took me years to start addressing my stepdad in that way, but she cut me off by saying that she and I have already known each other for years, so that was irrelevant. I want to make it clear that at no point was she mouthing or being rude. She was just genuinely upset. She then asked me if I would ever call her mom, and I said I don't know. My dad came home a little later, and he came into my room to tell me that Shauna was upset because I had said that I don't know if I would ever view her as my mom. And I said, A, that's not what I said, and B, at the end of the day, she isn't my mom. She's my stepmom. He, like Shauna, brought up my stepdad and how I viewed him like a dad and how it was unfair I wasn't giving Shauna the same chance. He also said it was quite petty and all I had to do was tell her I'd try calling her mom. Now this morning, my mom came to pick me up and I left without saying goodbye to Shauna. She wouldn't come out of her room. I feel really bad about it now, but I'm also really confused about whether or not I was really the jerk in the situation. So, am I the jerk? Edit. Thank you for all your responses. I try and get to them all, but there's a lot. I'll try to answer questions where I can. I texted Shauna a couple of hours ago to see if she'd be willing to talk, but she hasn't responded yet. There's no way of telling if she's even opened it, so I'm not going to assume she's ignoring me. My dad reached out to ask if I was okay earlier, and I said yes. Nothing else other than that. Sorry. I'll keep you all updated when Shauna responds. You wasted our time. Give us free stuff. Yeah. So this story ends with triumph for the entitled parents, not the poor people that had to deal with them. Could probably also count as choosing beggars, but it's here because my siblings' birthdays was the main subject used to manipulate the people at customer service. Cast. We've got my entitled manipulative grandma. We've got my entitled mother. We've got entitled sister. She's 12. We've got oblivious sister. She's 11. We've got oblivious brother. He's 9. And we've got me. I'm 18. So about a year ago, my family and I went on a road trip around America, something I've mentioned in more detail a lot in my other posts. We ended up in Florida for 3 weeks doing the theme parks, Disney World and Universal Studios most notably. This fell perfectly in line with OS and OB's birthdays on the 21st and 28th of October, exactly a week apart. For OB, we went to Legoland. The incident that happened there I have detailed in another post, but for OS, we went to Disney World Animal Kingdom. For a little context, we pre-ordered the wristbands you need to use your fast passes well before the trip and got them on our first day at the parks in Magic Kingdom. Unfortunately, there was an issue and we had to get that sorted out, which took about an hour. We were given free fast passes for our troubles, and that should have been it. But no. Entitled Grandma and Entitled Mom realized they could use this to their benefit and concocted a plan to get more free stuff. And sadly, it worked. I say sadly because it means that they learned no lesson and got away with it, meaning they'll undoubtedly do it again in the future as it worked before. But I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the free things we got, even if I did feel guilty for being complicit. So the first part of the plan was to screw up our fast passes and get more. We basically ended up with double for one ride, and so one of our wristbands had an issue again. I'm not entirely sure whether or not they did something to it. They got the band fixed and ended up exchanging the double up for a universal free pass. Basically, it allowed us to get on any ride instead of a specific one. Then part 2. This time, they screwed with the passes we needed to present along with scanning the wristbands in order to get into the park. Entitled Grandma and Entitled Mom forced us, me. The others were happy to go along with it, to lie, and we ended up at customer service again, where Entitled Grandma really started laying it on thick. Entitled Mom isn't a charismatic manipulator like Entitled Grandma, so she opted to wait outside. I went in initially, but couldn't stay for the thing because it was just so wrong. Entitled Grandma told my 3 siblings to start crying and look upset. Entitled Sister needed no convincing and is rather manipulative in her own right. Oblivious Sister and Oblivious Brother were happy to do so as well because they were excited to get the rides Entitled Grandma had promised them if they did. This whole thing providing them with a lesson in how to manipulate, which is why I walked out. I couldn't watch them lay it on thick about all the problems Disney had given us. I wanted to say something, but I knew that if I had, they would have been furious at me for ruining their plan, and it would have made my life on that road trip even more miserable. If that was even possible. Call me selfish, but I didn't want another screaming match with my mother to ruin Oblivious Sister's birthday. So Entitled Grandma came out triumphant and bragged about getting free fast passes to the new Avatar ride, notoriously all ready for usually having a 2 to 3 hour line wait on average. Entitled Mom patted Entitled Grandma on the back and expressed how proud she was of the kids for their acting skills. We went about our day in Epcot, and they were all in good spirits for the day, and they knew they had the best ride for the OS's birthday the next day. I had an awful time, as I did end up getting into a fight later in the day with Entitled Grandma over something stupid that hadn't even been my fault, so it turns out my silence was wasted. It wasn't until we got back to our accommodation that Entitled Mom realized that Entitled Grandma could have gotten something better than the free passes and had her get on the phone to try to negotiate an exchange of the passes for tickets to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween, something that would have cost us well over $1,000. And of course, she succeeded. She got the tickets, and we're going to go the next night, giving Oblivious Sister an amazing birthday night as well as day. But it doesn't end there. Turns out that once the passes were generated, they went back into circulation instead of disappearing after we switched. When Entitled Mom found this out, she booked the passes again, and so we got both the Avatar ride and the Mickey's Halloween tickets for free. Again, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the ride or all the free candy I collected at Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween, but I still know how wrong this was, and my siblings' takeaway from all this is that lying and manipulation is the way to get what you want, something that Entitled Sister uses frequently with full knowledge of what she's doing, an oblivious sister and oblivious brother do now without fully grasping that that's not the right way to do things.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.